Welcome to the February 24th, 2020 Troy City Council meeting. This evening we are very honored to have Reverend Jasmine Smart from the First Presbyterian Church of Troy to lead us in our invocation. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance after.
Let us pray. Spirit of life, who we call God, we come to you today in a spirit of unity to pray for harmony and peace in our neighborhood. We are grateful to you for this community, for the enthusiasm, vision, and hope that we have in 2020. We're grateful for the way our different viewpoints make us stronger, including our diverse faiths and perspectives. We're also grateful for the businesses that have chosen Troy as their home, and we pray for their flourishing. Thank you for the police, fire department, and other first responders as they serve the well-being and safety of our community. We are grateful for the city staff and the council members as they diligently and faithfully do the work set before them. We especially pray for the candidates being interviewed today for city council member position and ask that you be with them and calm their nerves and answer to the best of their ability. May the right person for the position become clear to all of us. Thank you for granting us all patience, kindness, and civility in our conversations with one another, now and always. As we commit to these things in our hearts, let us say together, Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, welcome to the February 24th, 2020 Troy City Council meeting. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson-Galt?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present. First on the agenda, certificates of recognition and special presentations. There are none this evening. There are no carryover items. There are no public hearings either. So we jump straight to public comment for items on the agenda. One person has signed up for that. We have former Mayor Gene Stein, who wishes to speak on I-4.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of City Council. I just want to say that our city is all about independence, individuality, and integrity. The highest virtue of Troy's local government is its nonpartisanship position. Since the time of our incorporation, we have remained nonpartisan, and I pray that we continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Stein. We appreciate you coming forward and speaking this evening. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items that are on the agenda. Now's an opportunity for City Council or City Management to give a reply or response. Anybody like to respond? I will just say again, thank you, appreciate it. I think being a nonpartisan council is very, very important to this city, and you would know, and those are wise words coming from you, so thank you for coming out tonight to tell us and remind us. It's always a good reminder. There are no postponed items this evening, so we move on to regular business. There are, I-1 is board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments or city council appointments this evening. I-2 is board and committee nominations. There are no mayoral nominations, but I do believe we have some city council nominations, so I'll hand it over to Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one set here. For the Historic District Commission, I would like to renominate Barbara Chambers and Al Petrulis for the term expiring March 1st, 2023.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton and supported by Council Member Hoderick that we renominate Barbara Chambers and Al Petrulis to the Historic District Commission for the terms that expire March 1st, 2023. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson-Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is I-3. It's a request for a closed session. Councilmember Erickson-Galt.
Thank you. I will move that I-3 request for closed session as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton that we approve I3, a request for closed session as printed in the agenda. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is I4, and I'd actually like to make a motion to waive City Council Rule 5B, regular meeting order of business, to address item I5 changes to the volunteer firefighter incentive program before the I4 interviews of candidates for City Council appointment.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton that we waive the rules to move I5 ahead of I4 as printed in the yellow sheet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. So that takes us to I5, changes to the volunteer firefighter incentive program. Here to have an introduction by Fire Chief Dave Roberts.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. What I think I'd like to do tonight is you've got a pretty thorough memo in front of you with the amended plan. So what I thought I would do is just recap what some of the important parts of the plan are. So the amended plan provides the following: automatic annual CPI increases retroactive to July 1st, 2019, additional incentive for those volunteers who serve as station officers, provides incentive credit for partial months served, and adds an option for surviving spouses to receive incentive benefits. So with all of the conversations we've had with the representatives from the stations, with the interaction that some of them have had with you, we would like to propose the amended plan as submitted. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Chief Roberts? Well, so I don't have a question necessarily, but I know that there were some additional numbers submitted by some of the representatives for the volunteer team, and I think I'm personally more comfortable having some of those numbers run from the actuary to see where those would lie against what this proposal is. And I'm wondering if I can get consensus from at least 3 more of you to do that. This plan and the memo have been very thorough, no question. And certainly we could probably make a decision on that tonight, but I think in fairness to the firefighters and the volunteers that it's best to at least see what their additional requests may look like so we can have the data, all the necessary data to make that determination.
Mayor, before you get consensus of council, I think there are just a couple of things that city administration would like to add, just so that you have full information. And I think Mr. Miller has a concern about the timing in relation to the budget. So this information, it will take a few weeks before we could get the information, and that may have an impact on the budget.
Yes, just to clarify, Rob is about ready to submit the first draft of the budget for my review. So one of the issues is if we get information 3, 4, or 5 weeks from now, we are really going to be far into the budget process. And we know that in what is being proposed by the committee will cost more, but we have no idea how much more. And so it's going to be difficult to try to fit those increased numbers into the budget. Well, but we will try to do everything we can by baking in the $410,000 increased cost from the version that management administration has proposed. And the second thing I wanted to note is that even the proposed or recommended plan amendments that for over $400,000 increase, remember, that's 4 employees. Generally, we say an employee costs about $100,000.
And furthermore, Mayor, just to add, this is not a bargaining unit. So I think council should be very mindful of that. The way that the trust is set up, it is set up the only way that we can do this, because this is a very unique situation. I think we're the only one in the entire country who has something like this length of service plan. I think it's important that we retain that. And the only way to do that is to not enter into negotiations. So council has to maintain the full authority under this plan, and that's the way that it's a viable plan and qualifies under the IRC provision, section 115. So I just wanted to make sure that council has all of that information in addition to the background information that is contained in the memorandum before you gave consensus or did a vote on it.
And to clarify, we provided answers to the questions this evening with the cost of the actuarial services so far, and I'm going to have to look at that. And the first, oh God, where is it? First, on July 17th, the first report cost $3,650. The second one on September 15th, which was able to use the model that was already developed, but changing some of the variables, that cost $1,100. And then it was looked at a third time on December 12th, and once again, that was $1,100.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think some of the difficulty here for me is that this has come to us probably 2 years into the process, if not more, because of various things that we've talked about. And what's proposed in front of us tonight is a huge increase to our budget, and there's definitely fiscal ramifications that we need to be aware of. What I struggle with is, well, I'm very mindful of not wanting to create a bargaining situation because they're not a bargaining group, and I know they understand that, and that's the difficulty here. I hate making a decision without having additional data that I think is pertinent to the conversation for an overall picture of what budgetary impact, what we have is going to do, what some additional options may do or not. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. There is an additional cost involved in doing that, and I understand the timing with the budgets. I think that's definitely a factor that needs to be considered. And also, Fire Chief Roberts did say tonight that they're recommending approval of the plan before us, so that adds a whole other layer of things to think about. I'm the only one talking up here. Does anybody else have any? Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I'd like to get the information. I understand that it's not a bargaining unit and that we're the ultimate deciders, but I'd like to see what the different options are and compare that, especially with budget season coming up. It'd be good to compare what that versus other budget priorities, how we can balance all that.
Anybody else? Oh, Rob Malzik.
Yeah.
Chief Financial Officer.
Sure. I have a question for you. I've read the email that was sent to you guys, but I don't understand how to dictate that to the actuary. I saw that in there it said, once the goal has been achieved. I'm not sure what the goal is, so I don't know how to, if you guys vote to do this, I don't know how to communicate at this point to the actuary. So I'm going to need a little help there as well.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yeah, what the current plan does is propose an increase to 819 for fiscal year 20, correct? So I think what the other figure was 890 for fiscal year 20, and then CPI adjustments from there on. So that's kind of the total amount we're looking at, but we could do maybe that and maybe an intermediate point.
I guess what the email I saw actually had 3 separate options.
Yeah,
something with CPI with a 0.5%.
Yeah, they had kind of a gradual.
Right. So I guess.
So we could, yeah. I guess if we need to clarify that, maybe we need to come to a conclusion on that if we want to see those different options. I mean, ultimately, the long-term costs are going to be getting up to that inflation-adjusted level and staying there. So I don't know how much those other plans would lower the costs, but I mean, really my main concern is what if we did the higher amount, what would that bring? So to me, that's compare 819 versus 890 fiscal year 20 CPI adjustments into the future. That's what I want to see. What the actuarial required contribution would be given that.
No.
Okay, and I guess what is that 890 though? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
Volunteer, that's the multiplier. So if you've been a firefighter for 10 years.
Oh, I
She
understand
retired.
that,
Yeah.
but I guess my question is, what does the 890 signify versus the one that was proposed to you guys tonight?
I don't want to. I don't want to.
I hate to put words in anybody's mouth, and I'm sure we're making City Attorney Bloom very uncomfortable having these kind of discussions, but I think that the crux of it is, based on what their understanding had been of the agreement back in 2014, where they would be by now, is my understanding of why they're starting at the 890 number for 2020 fiscal year as opposed to the 819. Whether they're right or wrong about that, that's a whole other decision that council solely has the authority to make. But I guess hearing Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton, to perhaps the consensus being sought should be changed to, if the numbers could be run at starting with a multiplier of 890 for fiscal year 2020. That's
Yes,
what you'd want to see.
That's what I like to see, and then we can really know, we can kind of get a sense of what we'd have to sacrifice to do that. That's really what budgeting's about, is balancing priorities. So.
Councilmember Hoderick?
I'm hearing you. I'm also, I mean, it's going to reduce the funded ratio of the plan further, which is a fiduciary concern to me. I mean, I don't need the actuary to tell me that that's what's going to happen. And again, from a fiduciary perspective, that does not make sense to me to go down that path. Having said that, I don't want to be perceived as not being open to understanding the numbers, but am I correct in, we can run those numbers, but we know that funded ratio of the plan is going to go down.
Right. It went from 54 to 48 in what we proposed to you,
right.
So I just assume I can't even tell you what it would go down, but it's going to go down more.
It's going to go down more. Right. And that's an issue. I mean, if I'm a volunteer, I'm concerned about that.
City Attorney Bloom, did you have something?
Not as to that, but Mayor, there was a representation that there was an agreement, and I just want to make sure that there is no agreement, that council is the only one that can enter into agreements. So I know that that's not your words. I know that that was a representation made to you, but I just wanted to make sure that the record was really clear. And then also, just if you are getting consensus, it would be very helpful if there were actually a formal resolution that were put forward so that our chief financial officer has the ability to talk to the actuaries, and so that it is very clear.
Also, Mayor, it's difficult to move forward when we don't fully understand what is being requested of us.
Correct. Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yeah, I came into this meeting kind of more or less in agreement with Mayor Baker and Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton that we need more information. And I still, theoretically, in the grand scheme of things, would like to have more information. However, I'm very concerned with what I'm hearing about how this might impact our budget. That is coming up very, very soon. I'm really hesitant to go into budget season with this potentially large financial obligation undecided. I'm not sure that that's the best way to address it. And I very much appreciate our firefighters who reached out to us and came to us to express their position on it. I understand, and we even had this conversation, that there was no agreement, there was no negotiation. However, based on things that have happened in the past, there was an impression of promises made. And that was what concerned me and why I wanted to get more information. I wanted to see what we could do. But now, I guess I'm thinking out loud, is that I'm torn between, wanting to get more information, wanting to do right as we can by our firefighters. However, I don't want us to be flying blind when we're deciding our budget in less than 2 months. Correct? Less than 2 months. So I'm not sure I could support at this point further delay in this decision.
Councilmember Abraham?
I have a question for Chief Roberts. Chief, you indicated that this was coming forward with approval from the fire staff or our volunteers. Is that approval on a station-by-station basis, or is it at large? Can you tell me what I'll say a percentage approval was?
Right. The approval that I referred to, and maybe I misspoke, was it's the recommendation that city administration has to bring this proposal before you tonight with the amounts indicated. So I don't know what the approval is throughout the volunteers, but they're obviously represented by the committee members, one from each station. So that's all I can answer in regards to that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Councilmember Brooks, do you have anything to say at this point? I know
it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that we want to get it right as best as we can. I want our firefighters to know that we appreciate them and that we are working really hard to do everything we can to best serve them. Because I know that, I mean, what they do for our community it's incredible, really. They save our city a lot of money in the end. With that being said, you know, I agree. I mean, it's hard because of the budget season, but I would favor probably getting a little bit more information, just because I think it would be helpful for us to go into it knowing exactly what numbers are before we make a decision. So.
Councilmember Abraham, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a record of supporting my council colleagues when they've asked for more time for a decision. And I am hesitating in providing that support to give more time, to get more information, because the budget season is upon us. And as Councilwoman Erickson-Galt indicated, this is a pretty big open item to have this late into the game, and it makes me a little uncomfortable thinking about our responsibilities for the city and how we manage its finances. Inherently, we're going to bring the fund level down to below the projected 48%, Rob. And that troubles me also because we do have some volunteers who will be retiring in the near future, and we will be dipping into that fund. And to have that fund go closer to 40% than 50 or 60% is problematic for me, particularly in light of the fact that while the economy is good right now, we are overdue for a recession. There's a recession every 10 to 15 years. We're hitting the 10 to 15 year mark, and if any of you watched the news today, the Dow plummeted pretty precipitously, and on things that we couldn't have predicted. So I am taking pause, and honestly, I'm still thinking this through, and until we vote on a formalized resolution, I'll be thinking it through, because this, I appreciate our firefighters. It's why I've supported building of the new fire truck. Anytime there's been a request for equipment, no brainer. We're there. Fire Station 4, new building, any cost creep, doesn't matter. We have to do this, we have to do it right. That's an investment for our firefighters. It's an investment in their safety, making sure they have the best. When I know that this is the changes that are being proposed here tonight are adding $400,000 to the budget, I know City Manager Miller said that's essentially 4 people that we could hire. I'm thinking of it in terms of equipment for our firefighters, or the next time they need a vehicle or repair. I'm being very mindful that we have limited funds and that we need to use them wisely. So I appreciate my colleagues wanting to find more information. I'm still processing that. I'm a little concerned, though, with the timing of this all.
Councilmember Hoderick?
I would like to support this as well, the consensus question, for reasons of fully vetting the numbers. But the Dow today, I feel anxious about making sure that this has taken a long time for reasons out of all of our control to handle to begin with. And I'm concerned about it dragging out further. And again, intuitively, that we know what the numbers are going to do. And that's a concern. It's rock, meet, hard place. Here we are in it again. That's why they pay us the big bucks, right? I want to make sure we've taken care of this and gotten it right, and we have this in place going forward. And I'm feeling a sense of urgency on it for reasons that would probably not be obvious to some of the firefighters. But there are big picture items here to think of, and I can't help but feel that some of what we're tangled in is still continued cleanup from a difficult era that we went through. So I'm where Councilwoman Abraham is. I think I would need to hear the resolution to vote on what we're doing. The numbers are going to show us a trend that from a fiduciary perspective, we would not want to be encouraging. We know that. We do know that. We don't want that creeping toward 40%. That would be irresponsible for us. It'd be irresponsible for our volunteers. We know that without running the actuarials, really. Thinking out loud is dangerous. I apologize for this. We're not able to meet on these topics outside of here, so this is why you see this discussion going on here. It's all part of the open meetings to make sure you're hearing everything we're thinking about, and we're very careful about that. So I'm stuck. I feel like we need to move forward with the plan as proposed and vetted, knowing we know what's going to happen when we run these numbers to that ratio. And it's the fiscal conservative in me is very, very concerned.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
I mean, we don't know. We have a general idea based on the previous amount versus now. The 400 increase to go from 769 to 819 was a $400,000 increase. So would a further increase be exponentially more? I don't know. So I don't know if it's another 400, if it's another million. I mean, if it was that much, it would probably be undoable. But I would like that information. But what we could do tonight is I don't see anything stopping us from approving the plan as presented, but also getting the information. And if we choose later, we can amend it. I mean, in the future. I mean, that's always an option.
It is, although I'm hesitant to give false hope to anybody, and I don't want to drag something on that, so I brought up the consensus thing early on because, and the reality is knowing that, any increase in the multiplier is going to decrease the trust and cost more of the annual budget. That is the known part of it. We just don't know how much. And out of fairness for the volunteers, I wanted to at least entertain that concept to see, maybe it's not as bad as we think, or maybe it's tenable in some other way. I don't get the feeling that if I made a motion to even run those numbers right now, that looking around that would pass. And I'm not sure that's even necessarily wise to do. Which is interesting. Here I am tongue-tied. That never happens. Councilmember Abraham?
I mean, it's as you say, I don't want to give anyone false hope by running the numbers. It's not that I don't want to know what they are, but I also don't want to be perceived as pre-committing by having those numbers run. We have a tough budget coming ahead of us. And any hint of a pre-commitment is something that I really want to avoid, as I do want to avoid any appearance of negotiating, because I would prefer not to be in trouble with the IRS as well. As I'm sure City Manager Miller would agree is a good approach to take.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'd say I'm not inclined to run the numbers.
Then let me do this. I'm going to move I-5 changes to the Volunteer Firefighter Incentive Program as printed.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilmember Hoderick that we approve I-5 changes to the Volunteer Firefighter Incentive Program as printed. Discussion on the plan as submitted.
I mean, just to put on the table, sorry, thank you, Mayor. Just to put on the table, I'll amend the motion to add, we would like city staff to provide an actuarial estimate to raise the volunteer incentive to $890 for fiscal year 20, and then adjusted CPI from then on. Any support?
Any support? I don't think it's going to pass.
Okay.
I'm not going to support it.
No.
So, which leaves the original I-5 on the table. Discussion on I-5 as printed. We've said a lot of it already.
There's a lot of really positive stuff in here.
Right. Yes.
That we've done right. And really, we worked really hard to get things right and improved, and demonstrating that we're listening to concerns is important to me. But at some point, there becomes a need to do the right thing at the right time, and timing is critical, I think, on this perspective. Because I don't want some unintended consequences for delay and with the IRS potentially, and I think this is the right thing to do at the right time. And I feel good about doing it on behalf of our volunteers. And I hope if there's any concerns about that, folks would reach out and we can talk more, but I think we need to do this.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yeah, I mean, I plan to support, is it I-4 or I-5, or whatever this motion is. I mean, it's a substantial improvement versus what we had before, which was still a great system. But this, currently our contribution is 1.3 million. This bumps it up to 1.75 million, so nearly a 35% increase. This is a very large increase to this plan for our firefighters. It's heading in the right direction, and I will support this. I'm wanted to get those numbers, but I understand it. You all bring good points here. It's a very difficult decision because we have a lot of budget priorities. 400,000 is almost 1% of our entire general fund budget, so that's a huge commitment already. But I'll support this.
Councilmember Abraham.
I feel badly because I think there's going to be some firefighters that think that we don't appreciate them. We really do. We, as a council, I think, felt very strongly of, that the delay in this whole FEVIP discussion from last July was delayed until now. I mean, this is 9 months later. And we did make a conscious decision and provided direction that we wanted things to be retroactive to last July, as you can see in the memo. We are trying to do the right thing for our firefighters who are going to retire next year, 10 years, and 30 years from now. And so while there may be some unhappiness for those that may not be retiring real soon, we have to always keep in mind that we've got folks that are going to retire in the very near future, and we need to make them whole, and we need to make them whole for their sometimes decades worth of service, unpaid. This is a benefit that to show our appreciation to our volunteer firefighters. They are a big part of what makes the city so great. So I will be supportive of this measure. It is a vast improvement from what was in place, and we did our best to make you whole back from July of 19, when this really should have been put in place.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes, I just wanted to add that while I could not support Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton's motion to amend this to add in provision for more information, I do share his belief that this is a step in the right direction. It's providing additional benefits. It's long overdue. We need to move forward on it, and that it's not written in stone. There's always the possibility that if the financial outlook for the city allows at some later date to revisit this and improve on it, then I sincerely do want to do that. And I do, again, appreciate the firefighters who reached out to us to share their opinion. I think that one of the problems that we've had in the past year or two or more with the city is that our council hasn't been listening to people. And I appreciated that opportunity to hear and learn. Being new on council, I wasn't familiar with a lot of the history of what went on for the last several years. And I will, hopefully going forward, be better educated on this, and I appreciate you doing that. And let's, I will support this.
Anyone else? Councilmember Brooks.
Yes. Obviously, I wanted to try to get numbers just because, I think it would be good. But I understand the concerns that all the other council members have about, running into budget season, and that's very fair. But as everyone else is saying up here, we just want our firefighters to know that we really, really, really do appreciate your contributions, your service to our city. And I will approve the plan. If this is what we have coming before us, this is the best I believe that we can do at this time for you. And as Councilmember Galt said, it's not written in stone. It can change at some point in the future, because obviously we want to do our best to get it right for you guys. So.
Went a little longer than I expected to this evening. I'll say, Jason, you're here. You represented everybody. I know that I have a feeling that several of the firefighters will be completely fine. Some may be a little bit miffed. I don't know. I can't think of a good word for that. But I hope that you can communicate to them that we understand you've gone through a lot over time trying to work this through. But also there are benefits that you and I have discussed, and we've all discussed, that are in this plan. There is consistency in this plan, which was one of the big additions to have it annually adjusted. You don't have to come back before council every few years to try to figure out what to do next. There is a long-term plan in place. It does provide for the option to make changes if necessary, and maybe times will show. It's tough. The scheduling's tough right now. Obviously, that's not your fault. I'm sure you would have liked this taken care of a couple of years ago. We're well aware of that. But I know that I do, and all of us do, value the firefighters and the commitment you provide to our community and the retirees. I mean, there's a lot of people in this community that have either served on our fire department or currently do, and the last thing I'd want is for any of them to think that we don't care and that we are not valuing them and what they do for us, recognizing that as volunteers, they're in a very unique position, and this benefit plan is designed to provide a thank you after so many years of service. Councilmember Erickson Galt, some of us on the previous council were listeners. Maybe as a whole, the perception was that we weren't, but some of us were, and just had to get that out there. But,
President Company accepted.
yeah, thank you. But I sought consensus early on because the numbers were going to not look good for the trust, and they were not. It was going to be more expensive at a time when we are trying to squeeze more money here and there out of what we have because of all the factors that have gone on over the past 10, 12 years in our economy and where we are. So I think that has played a role in this tonight. And I am proud of what this plan does as a benefit plan. And I will support it. And if there's no further discussion, I'll ask for the vote. Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. Which takes us back to I-4, which is the reason probably a lot of you are here tonight. It's the interview of candidates for our city council appointment, be introduced by City Clerk Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have 5 candidates here tonight to be interviewed. You have your list of questions that you all submitted that have been compiled into one sheet, and you have notes pages for yourself for each candidate. And then after the interviews, there's a resolution on the agenda to be for the candidate who's chosen to be appointed to the council member position, and I'm prepared to give the oath tonight to that person. So if there's any other questions?
Question, Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yeah, will we just be asking the 6 questions? There's no opening or closing statements or anything like that?
That would be up to you guys.
What have we done in the past?
I don't think we've allowed opening statements or closing statements. It's just gone right into the questions.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
I think that's better if we didn't give them
Yes.
advance warning that they needed to prepare.
Right,
this.
right, right,
Wouldn't
yeah.
be fair. And just for everyone watching tonight, and the candidates are aware of this, no one has seen the questions other than the 6 of us and obviously city management. They'll be the exact same questions for each interviewee, and we'll ask them. You'll be tired of hearing them by probably the 3rd or 4th person that comes up, but they will be the same for consistency and all fairness. And the candidates are back in the boardroom not listening to each other's answers, so they don't get the questions beforehand and have an opportunity to formulate an answer before they know. So if that's it, I think we're ready to begin. And we are going alphabetically with the candidates, so I believe Daniel Legawis is first.
Hello, good evening.
Mr. Legawis, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. So I will, I know you know this, I'm sure you've been told, I believe beforehand, but we all have a question for you.
Sure.
We will go in order on our sheet, and it'll be the same questions for everybody.
Sure.
There are no set time limits for your answers, but I would ask that you have some brevity and realize that there are 5 of you, and if you all spoke for 10 minutes on each answer, we could be here a long time. So.
Right. Understand, brevity, that's good.
Brevity's the word. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. So here's my question, and it's a compound question. So, the city of Troy has gone through quite a bit over the past few years. Knowing that, why do you want to be appointed to Troy City Council? What do you believe are the main issues facing our residents and businesses? And what do you think you can do as an individual council member to solve or move in the direction of solving those issues?
Well, that's a good question, Mayor. I had the fortune, the benefit, and the honor just to be able to do a lot of door knocking during the last city council campaign. Got to talk directly to a lot of our residents, and it's pretty clear what quickly rises to the top of what's important to the residents by and large. I would say development would be, it has to be, if not 1A or 1B. You know, a lot of residents are concerned about the types of developments going on, and that ties back into the master plan and potentially revising the master plan coming up, looking at that next year. I think all this has kind of been, I guess, addressed over the last couple of years, but financial transparency, helping out moving forward after the Plant Moran forensic audit. I would say earlier in the door knocking, I saw that a lot more, and then as time went on, things started to settle a little bit, and maybe that fell behind the more zoning master plan development issues. And I'd say 3 would be probably the library millage. That's kind of snuck up on us a lot. Believe it or not, it's up again for renewal or to, I guess, find a solution next year or in 2021. And so people were already starting to talk a little bit about the library. My background is a financial analyst, for those that don't know me. I work exclusively on 3 things: fraud investigations, business valuations of small to mid-sized companies, and I calculate damages in large commercial lawsuits on behalf of lawyers mostly. And so my background is math, finance, accounting. I think I do a lot with helping move forward with the forensic piece of it, moving on with financial transparency, the library millage. I know we have budget session coming up here in a couple months. There's a lot of discussion probably how to preserve our AAA bond rating. I think my skill set may help out a lot. And then as far as the development goes, I've had the benefit over the last 3.5 years of serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I'm not an expert, but I've become more acquainted with the zoning ordinance and by extension, the master plan. So almost on a monthly basis, we have to wrestle with finding the right balance between proposed development or variance requests and then protecting the residents' health, safety, and welfare.
Thank you. Next up will be Councilmember Abraham.
Hi.
Trust between City Council and residents is essential to good government. That trust has taken a hit as a result of Council's handling of the former city manager before and after his criminal actions were known. What measures do you think City Council should take to grow trust with residents?
Well, the good news is I think they're already on the right direction. You know, Plant Moran had recommended 17 specific action items that mostly pertain to the accounting internal controls, but also whistleblower and training and different things like that. I think that helps, you know, stronger accounting internal controls will help minimize the chance of fraud happening again. It can't eliminate that chance entirely, but at least reflects to the public that, you know, proper controls are in place, actions are taken, and so you minimize that chance. As far as building the right trust, it comes down to really relationships, you know, relationships between council and the residents, relationship between council and the now city manager, making sure, you know, the tone at the top is right. The reason I can use this tone at the top kind of, you know, vernacular is the ACFE came out with that. That's the Association of, I think, forensic examiners or certified forensic examiners. It's kind of an association I'm used to dealing with too, because I work a lot with the AICPA standards and different accounting standards to reflect financial transparency. So as far as getting back to your question about how can we reflect good trust with our residents, accounting internal controls, you know, making sure we have good relationships with tone at the top, maybe a better or a revised ethics statement, and I think that could go a long way.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brooks.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I'm just listening. I'm like,
yeah. Okay.
Please outline a few ways in which Troy City Council can improve community outreach.
Boy, well, I guess the first way would be just the old-fashioned door knocking, you know, going out there as part of your campaign, and that's the best way to at least initially start to reach out to people. I know there's I've heard different initiatives as far as pop-up, different pop-up surveys and different ways of advertising online or Facebook or social media to bring people in. I don't know standing here how successful those have been or how well we've been able to bring in more people that way, but I would have to believe that social media is one tool, Facebook especially, to be able to get people involved. But I kind of like my old way of doing things too. It's just door knocking during the campaign season, trying to get an ear to the ground.
Councilmember Erickson Gall.
Council has a jam-packed schedule over the coming months. In addition to the regular and special meetings that are already scheduled and the advanced preparation necessary for those meetings, whoever steps into this position will have catch-up work to do to be ready for important decisions such as our budget. Right. And on top of that, you'll have to run to retain the seat in August. So have you thought about the time commitment and the work involved, and what are you doing to prepare for that challenge?
Well, I have thought about the cost and the time that goes into, serving the city. I'm prepared to put in whatever work is necessary to catch up to speed. And, I know I'm playing behind a little bit. I'm playing catch up, filling in for a seat. But, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to learn the material. And I've already been preparing over the last year or so as far as digging into the financial records and the different, meeting notes and, presentations and trying to be as educated as I can on certain hot topics in the city. But if your concern is work ethic, I assure you, don't worry. I'll be working harder than anybody to catch up.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. What unique perspective and experience would you bring to City Council?
Well, if I had to think of a differentiator, because I'm running against lawyers, I'm running against people in the automotive industry, I'm talking to lawyers and people from the automotive industry, I think my real differentiator is my finance and accounting background, maybe my math background. I know this is a very short nomination, and we're only talking 5 months, but really there's so much happening in the next 5 months here. With the budget, with the library millage, there's a lot of specific financial and accounting issues that are going to be presented before City Council here that I think that I have, a competitive advantage over my other, although well-qualified peers, that I can help a little bit better in that area.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hoderick.
What policy or strategy will be your main priority during your appointment to council?
That's a good question.
You may have just answered that already, in fairness.
Well, I could pick a couple, but let me stick with one. I'm going to say, although this falls predominantly on the planning department's shoulders, thank goodness for guys like us, trying to find some sort of reconciliation between the master plan and residents' expectations. It seems like, the master plan had a major overhaul in 2008, and that was during the Great Recession, where it seemed like more emphasis was on trying to encourage developers to do more in the city. And 12 years later, we're starting to see on the tail end, or maybe after a 10-year economic upturn, we're starting to see what happens when there's a clash between, being consistent with the master plan and then protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. And well, let me use an analogy. This is kind of crude, but it's kind of like, let's say you go to a movie, you expect that it's really good, it's highly critically acclaimed, and you go there and it's just a letdown, and the audience doesn't like it. I want to be able to see that in the master plan, using that analogy, that critics love it and the audience loves it too. You have a win-win, because right now what's going before the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board, City Council, you've seen it before, you have a clash. You have a disconnect between, well, do I want to be consistent with the master plan, or do I want to make residents happy with what's being built around them? There's got to be a way to narrow that down a little bit. So hopefully some of that stuff I've been learning with protecting the health, safety, and welfare, protecting property values, et cetera, from the Zoning Board, which is kind of overlapping what you're seeing from rezoning applications, can help a little bit narrow that gap, if that at all answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all of us. That was it.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Family as well.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up is David Anderson. All set?
I'm all set, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Anderson. Welcome. As I said to Mr. Gowis before you, we each have a question to ask. It'll be the same questions that were asked to Mr. Gowis before you and the three after you. So with that said, I will go ahead and get started.
Sounds great, and thank you.
One thing also, there are no time limits specifically for your answers, but please be mindful of the fact that we have to interview several of you, and brevity is a good word.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, first question, and it's a compound question, so there's a couple parts to it. The city of Troy has gone through quite a bit over the past few years. Knowing that, why do you want to be appointed to Troy City Council? What do you believe are the main issues facing our residents and businesses, and what do you think you can do as an individual council member to solve or move in the direction of solving those issues?
The reason I'd like to be a member of the City Council is twofold. One, I'm a firm believer in the concept of public service. The late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that public service is the rent we pay for the space we occupy. And I truly believe that sentiment, and I try to live by that in terms of my everyday existence. A second thing that I find important is that I've lived in Troy for 40 years, and that sort of differentiates me from the other candidates that are applying for this position. All the other candidates have basically been living in Troy for less than 20 years, and so I have a historical perspective that the other candidates do not have, and I think that's very important. We learn by history, and I don't want to see us make mistakes like we have had in the past in Troy. Not very many, but an occasional mistake here and there, and it's something that's important for us to want to avoid. As far as the direction of the city of Troy, there are a number of things that I think are important. First of all, I think long-term planning is important, and I think the concept of the strategy approach that we have in Troy is an excellent approach. The 2019-20 strategy approach that the council is working on now is great, and we need to continue that process. When I was the Oakland County Bar Association president, I implemented a 3-year long-term strategy approach, and it's worked very well for our Bar Association, and I know it's going to continue to work well for our city. I believe that our city is going in the right direction. I think we can always improve relative to things that need to be done, and that's why we have the city council and all the support staff that comes with it that makes our city so great. I've actually lived in Troy, like I say, for 40 years, and my law practice has been in Troy for 43 years. And the reason that I've done that is because we have such a dynamic, diverse, and wonderful city. And I would like to be on the city council to continue that trend in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Abraham.
Mr. Anderson, trust between city council and residents is essential to good government. That trust has taken a hit as a result of council's handling of the former city manager before and after his criminal actions were known. What measures do you think city council should take to grow trust with residents?
I think the most important thing that we need to do relative to growing trust with our residents is to have transparency in the process and to make certain that the people of our great city know how we are doing things, why we are doing things. I think that is incredibly important relative to the whole process. We also need to make sure that as a city council that we are following checks and balances in terms of our procedures as far as running city government, and I think that we've got those things in alignment at this point in time. So we need to make sure that we have our citizenry educated and understanding exactly what we're doing as city government. We need to follow the principles of home rule that is part and parcel of what we do day in and day out. And I think if we make sure that we communicate those concepts through all the different mediums that we have available to us, that I think we're going to go in a positive direction and hopefully not visit that same road that we did a couple of years ago. There's a lot of bumps in it, and we don't want to make those again.
Councilmember Brooks.
Please outline a few ways in which Troy City Council can improve community outreach.
There's a number of areas as far as community outreach that we need to do, and we have to look at the different segments of our community and how they have certain needs. For instance, we have a younger group of people. I would characterize those people as being people in middle school, high school, college, and the millennial age. And we need to make sure that we have opportunities for those people as far as employment is concerned. We need to have opportunities relative to our zoning to make sure that there's affordable housing for those types of people. And we need to make certain that we have all sorts of activities that make those people want to come to our city and view us as first and foremost as the place they want to live. We do a pretty good job as far as our middle-aged people are concerned, and I think they're quite comfortable, but I still think that we need to constantly improve upon the services that we have, our aquatic center, our community center, our school system, our trail programs, our park and rec programs. All of these things are top drawer, and we need to continue to improve upon those to make sure that our middle life residents feel equally empowered and included in our community. And lastly, we need to make sure that we are addressing the needs of our city senior citizens. I happen to be a baby boomer, and so I sort of fall in that particular group. And we need to make sure that we have affordable housing for our seniors and that we make our community desirable for our seniors to want to stay in. I know that you folks read the same literature that I do, and Troy has been rated in several publications as being a place where people want to retire. And the reason they want to retire here is because our community makes them feel wanted and involved. And so we need to make sure that we push those issues relative to our senior citizens and make them want to stay here and finish out their lives and their golden years in this neck of the woods.
Thank you. Councilmember Erickson Gall.
Council has a jam-packed schedule over the coming months. In addition to the regular and special meetings scheduled and the advanced preparation necessary for those meetings, whoever steps into this position will have catch-up work to be ready for important decisions such as our budget. And on top of that, you'll have to run and retain the seat in August. Have you thought about the time commitment and work involved, and what are you doing to prepare for that challenge?
I have. Historically, I've served on the Adrian College Board of Trustees, which was an extremely demanding position, and I've also been past president of the Oakland County Bar Association, the largest voluntary bar association in the state of Michigan with over 3,000 members. I had to allocate my time appropriately between that and my job, and I thought I did so quite effectively. I've given the time commitments associated with running for this position a great deal of thought. I have the time to serve in this position, to meet our meetings, to participate in the study sessions, and to make sure that I'm an active and contributing member relative to this process. I would be running for the position in August, assuming that you folks were kind enough to appoint me to this particular position. And again, I can't emphasize enough, Troy has been wonderful for me and my family. We have 3 generations of Andersons living in Troy, and I want to make sure that this wonderful city that we live in is a place where my grandsons want to also make their home when they get older.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. What unique perspective and experience would you bring to City Council?
The experience that I bring to City Council that some of my worthy candidates won't have is the fact that I have some legal background, which will help me understand the process a little bit quicker and better than some of the other people that may be applying. And I don't say that in any way to denigrate the other candidates that are running. They're wonderful people. They're my neighbors, and I love being their neighbors in Troy. But my legal background will hold me in good stead relative to getting up to speed quickly here. And then also, I have a business experience that will also be part and parcel, which will help to make the experience just that much better as far as that goes. And then as far as my overall involvement, I've been on the Elections Commission for over 35 years. Whenever the city of Troy has asked me to volunteer in any capacity, whether it was to be on the beautification committee or to do anything else that I could do to make my city better, I've always done it. I've been actively involved in the homeowners associations at both Stone Ridge and at Beach Forest. And just about anything that my city has asked me to do, I'm more than willing to step forward and do. Plus, you combine that with the experience that I just described, and I think I make a very good fit relative to this open position.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Hi,
Hi, how are you tonight?
I'm hanging in there.
That makes 2 of us.
What policy or strategy will be your main priority during your appointment to council?
There are a number of things that I think that are important for this particular council to do. I alluded to it earlier that we want to make sure that we have a long-term strategy, and that's why I like the 2019-2020 strategy approach that we're doing. I also want to make sure that our city council follows our master plan, just like we did a couple of weeks ago with the Park and Rec program. I grew up in Southfield and Lathrop Village area back in the 60s, and we did not have a master plan. And I am so delighted that the city of Troy, for my 40 years, has a master plan and learned from it, and we've stuck to it. And our development, both commercial and residential, has been rational, progressive, and has been a very, very good way of doing business. We've also been rated, as you folks know, as one of the safest cities in both the state of Michigan and in the entire Midwest region. It is imperative that we make sure that we work hand in glove with our police department to continue our public safety efforts, and our fire department is absolutely fantastic as far as that goes, and we need to make sure that we support those good folks. The other thing that I think we need to also make sure is that we work together with county government, state government, and the federal government. If you'll notice, we have a new county executive. We need to make sure that Mr. Coulter is connected with Troy. He was just at our public library tonight, in case you didn't know it, doing one of those meet the county executive approaches. We want to make sure our new elected officials are working with us, and we want to make sure that after this election in the fall that we connect with all the appropriate federal people. So that's another thing that I think is important. And last but not least, I think it's important that any person that serves as a council member here have at least 3 or 4 of these attributes. They need to be civil, they need to be transparent, they need to be ethical, and they need to be hardworking. And that's what this city council panel in front of me exemplifies tonight. And I want to be part of that group and make Troy just that much better of a place to live and work.
Thank you. That's all of our questions this evening.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate you having me this evening.
Thank you. Next up will be Rebecca Chamberlain-Krienga.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome. Say the same thing I've said to others, sort of. Same questions will be asked of all of you by each of us. We'll go in the same order. Also, keep in mind that there's no set time limit for your answers, but there are several of you that we're interviewing, and with 5-6 questions each, brevity is the word of the evening. So please keep that in mind. And with that, I will go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you for coming. We appreciate all of you for coming and being here. I know it's not easy. So first question is, the city of Troy has gone through quite a bit over the past few years. Knowing that, and this is a multi-part question, why do you want to be appointed to Troy City Council? What do you believe are the main issues facing our residents and businesses? And what do you think you can do as an individual council member to solve or move in the direction of solving those issues?
Actually, a 3-part question, but I'll try my best to stay on track. To start, so a big motivating factor of why I want to be here today, why I'd love to join all of you, is each and every one of you and what you stand for. Your values, your leadership, especially at a time when our council, our city, is doing so much and turning over a new leaf towards transparency, towards accountability, and especially towards citizen engagement in a new way. And I want to be a part of all of you, joining you in that at an exciting time. The next part was about pressing issues in the community, if I'm not correct. One thing that I think is especially pressing, and this comes out of my years, the past 4 years serving on the DDA, Global Troy, doing community engagement activities for my neighborhood association, engaging a number of years ago our city administration to share out about the budget and get input from residents around what's going on. And something that I see to be, there's a number of real issues we have, and the first I'm going to address is both a conundrum that we have as council and as a city to address, as well as something that is pressing for our residents. And that is around growth and development. So we all know that there's a lot of anxiety in this community, and partly that's because suburbs, us like Troy, is going through redevelopment at a whole new time that it hasn't actually experienced before, and there isn't always a roadmap of how that happens. But the dilemma I see is that, and this is a conundrum, and my mentors have always said you focus on the conundrums, on the paradoxes, and that's where you dive in and you dig deep. And the paradox is that we know revenues, essentially, most of our revenue comes from property tax, and we do have the 3rd highest property valuation in taxable value in the state of Michigan. But at the same time, property taxes are they're modest. They're modest, and our residents bear the burden of that modest growth. And that really we do need new development for there actually to bring in new revenues. And that's partly because of Headley and Proposal A that we all know. You all know that very well. So this is a conundrum. I think it's not a time we can't be anti-development, but it is a time to think about where development happens and why it happens. And that means we need to revisit our master plan. We need to take elements of it, take it back to residents, the elements that are contentious around how Big Beaver transitions into neighborhoods. We think of the Tollbrook controversy. We think about how we're trying to solve for the missing middle of housing that our residents need. Our seniors ask for this. But at the same time, as we see some of these initiatives, that they're not being well received in communities. So that we need to go back to the master plan, because the master plan talks about the neighborhood nodes and where this will exist. So is a chance to update, to engage, and where, and that's probably another question, where I see opportunity for some of this. But that's where I see it is a major issue is around growth, around development, and the anxiety our residents feel. And this conundrum. And the other, as I said, with kind of this missing middle, is our seniors. Our seniors want to feel an engaged part of this community. And they are asking for the housing that they need. But this is a housing that we find is hard to move forward. So this is another conundrum that we need to find a way to address and be able to engage the different parties who are part of this. Another thing I would mention is just open space, green space, parks and recreation. I think more than ever, this is something partly because of the anxiety over the growth and development is all the more we need to look, and I know this council approved the 2020, the new Parks and Rec Plan, which can even bring in DNR funding, is to really hone in on that as opportunity to kind of to let residents know that we know 98% of our land is developed, but the green space that's there, that we want it to work for residents and be there for residents. And I could say other things about diversity, equity, inclusion in our city, serving on Global Troy, but I probably could spend 10 minutes talking about that. And you had a third part of that question. Is that what I bring to that? Is that, okay.
You covered some of that, but go ahead.
So partly, yes, wanting to tackle these conundrums, wanting to dive into them, and no better way to do that than through our strategy and our budget session. And that's why actually it's an exciting time to join council when you are actually going in and diving into the budget. And I come fresh off of municipal finance training, thanks to the Kresge Foundation, and I look forward to kind of putting on that hat and being partners with you all in that and thinking about the conundrum of how do we balance out that tax base? How do we think about how do we grow our revenues? And of course, the library was something I didn't mention, but that is the other thing that came back through all my years of feedback is people want an updated library and they want it open 7 days a week. But we have challenges around our revenue and how we bring that to bear. I could spend more time answering this, but I'll stop that for brevity's sake.
Thank you. Councilmember Abraham.
Trust between City Council and residents is essential to good government. That trust has taken a hit as a result of Council's handling of the former city manager before and after his criminal actions were known. What measures do you think City Council should take to grow trust with residents?
That's excellent. It's an excellent question. It's something that has been the heartbeat of what I believe in and much of my life, working as a social development specialist, working in philanthropy. That is all about partnerships. It's about getting into the community. And I know a lot of you are committed to that. It's the time and opportunity we spend talking with people, seeking to build bridges with multiple audiences. And one example of something that I sought to do a couple of years ago and could be a way to build trust, especially around the financial element going into budget season, was a couple of years ago prompted and really pushed, and I actually thank some of the city staff who made that possible, is take our budget, put it into infographics, make it accessible, and take it out to the people and let people give input on that, on the elements of where we're spending money, and they can see that in a way that is easy to understand instead of having to dive into long reports and attend meetings and whatnot. So making things accessible, making government accessible to people is essential in that. I think that there's also been great efforts. This is why I would be so proud to serve at this time with our city administration and our city manager, bringing expenses to council and being open and sharing that. And that is talked about even in papers. And that's a way that we can communicate with our residents, that there's a partnership and that we're seeking to to play our role of social accountability as we do, as you are the ones who hire our leadership in city, and that there is a relationship that's happening, and you're sharing that out with residents, but using every chance we can to engage our residents, get into neighborhood association meetings, and wherever you can, as things I've sought to do as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Brooks.
Okay, hi, you may have answered much of this, but please outline a few ways in which Troy City Council can improve community outreach.
Absolutely. Well, my first idea I had, and something that I sought to do, and there's someone, I'm not sure she's here tonight because I didn't look around, Maggie Hughes, a former employee, was someone who made this essential, is taking the budget. There's ways you can make it accessible. In my former career, we did kind of open budgeting, and it's not a full open budget process, but making it accessible that you can take it out to the library, you can take it to the community center, and allow then residents to give input on different elements of it. I think that's a very clear strategy that can happen. I attempted also, and did in my neighborhood association, bring in the city leadership a number of years ago to also speak about major issues that are happening in the community, and to be able to have a two-way dialogue for residents in my neighborhood to hear about those, as well as to be able to give input on those issues and what they saw moving forward. So those are just a couple of strategies. There's also, from my background working in international development, there's loads of other kind of creative mechanisms around pop-ups. And I know that actually Eileen has done this, and doing pop-ups in our library and sharing out information around our boards and councils, helping to diversify those who are involved. And I think there's more and more that can be done around that thinking.
Thank you. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Council has a jam-packed schedule over the coming months. In addition to the regular and special meetings scheduled and the advanced preparation necessary for those meetings, whoever steps into this position will have catch-up work to be ready for important decisions such as our budget. And on top of that, you have to run to retain the seat in August. Have you thought about the time commitment and work involved, and what are you doing to prepare for that challenge?
Absolutely. So this is basically a time management question. So that's all about planning and partnership for me. So even making this decision, it was not just my decision. I took this decision to my husband, and we talked about it as a family to see if this is something that really we could do as a family. And second, I took this to my boss. And I didn't just tell her I was going to do it. I actually asked her. I said, and this has been part of my leadership growth, is not just telling people what I want, but inviting people into my decision making. I come to it with an evidence, with an evidence base of why, and an argument of why I want to do it, but inviting people into that. And so allowing her to, and she's been fully supportive, and she's someone who worked with someone here on this council as well. And so part of that is also good planning. And I have been fortunate working in an organization like the Kresge Foundation. We are one of the leaders in the country around issues of economic community development. I was very blessed to go through an extensive public finance training with one of the leaders. She comes out of the Lincoln Land Institute in Boston. So bring that knowledge and some other things I'm passionate about and want to spend some time looking at is around Opportunity Zone that we have in Troy, our DDA's QDI initiative. These are things that I actually have, by sake of where I work at Kresge, we have one of the leaders in the country on Opportunity Zones who's testified before Congress. He's my friend. I can just ask him for advice. And those things are relevant, and bring that knowledge to bear to help council as it moves forward in this work.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here. What unique perspective and experience would you bring to City Council?
Perspective and experience. I could talk a lot about the elements of who I am as an anthropologist, my background as a social development specialist, having worked around the world on issues that involve municipal development. I speak about myself as a communicator. But I think what I want to share a little bit is just the values behind what's motivating me to run and who I am in this. And to do that, I just want to share, just in 2 minutes, just a brief account around my grandfather. As some of you know, I lost a grandmother this week, and so trying to do as much as I can to just really celebrate their memory. And those values, I think, speak to kind of who I am and what I bring in terms of not just my technical expertise, which I've written about in my application, but the values that undergird that. So my background, one of my grandpas, he moved halfway across this wonderful country, sold all he had to join Detroit's booming automotive industry. And he worked his way up from being a staffer, an accountant at General Motors, starting his own division. My other grandpa, he worked in a factory by day, and he ran his own business, a roofing business, and a farm by night. Something that these two grandpas had in common, despite their different careers and paths, is they both believed in hard work, as well as they taught me the value of being wise stewards for the next generation. They worked tirelessly, and they did all that they could to provide a better life for their families. And so these values of hard work, the value of being a wise steward for a generation after you, these are things that I sought to put into practice when I, a girl from a small northern Michigan town, worked hard, saved resources, went on to earn my PhD, and then went on to work at one of the world's leading development finance institutions, the World Bank, and now at the Kresge Foundation, one of the leading private foundations in this country. And so these values of hard work, of wise stewardship, I now want to bring these to the opportunity to serve Troy, to be able to be a wise fiscal and responsible purveyor and carer of the resources that Troy has. And that is to make life better tomorrow than it is today for all of our residents. And thinking of children like my son, thinking of our seniors who really want to feel like they're a part of our community, for residents across the board. And that's what I welcome. Those are the values that are driving beyond just my expertise, so why I wish to sit next to all of you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Hodrick.
What policy or strategy will be your main priority during your appointment to council?
It's a great question. I think there's, on the one hand, I think there are those things that are really pressing in our community, and then there are things that I know that I add some value in and that I think can also help balance out. So I think number one that I know is essential in our community is our library millage. And so we know that ends in 2021, and we know, according to the balance sheet, that the library spends more than it has to resources it has coming in, and we know that it needs not just the operating expenses, but even capital infrastructure, all of that. And so that is something deeply to tackle. I have some ideas. I'm not sure I want to throw them out completely right now, but there have been some creative funding mechanisms in my own hometown that have involved different partners in helping, and we have one of the leading public libraries in the state of Michigan, in my hometown of Charlevoix. So would love to be a thought partner. I know there already is a group that is thinking through these things of how we can leverage different creative resources. The other thing that I really would like to focus on, along with Parks and Rec, and thinking about our seniors and ensuring Medigo and their resources, is something I want to bring to the table. As I mentioned, opportunity zones, and we have an opportunity zone in Troy, and I hope you've all had a chance to be briefed on that, and just to learn more about what we're doing to promote this opportunity, to remember what it was actually created for, how it can bring that taxable value up in the way that we need to, but in a way that is sustainable with our residents, having a voice in that. Thinking also about, as I've served on the DDA, is our work, we have a QDI, Quality Development Initiative, and focusing development, incentivizing it in the places where it is. And again, doing it in a way that's sensitive to our residents, that there's a buffer between that development that is happening along Big Beaver or in the opportunity zone and where residents are living, so being sensitive to that. So updating the master plan, that would be a very essential thing that I would push for, along with thinking about how the opportunity zone, how QDI, how these things can foster our revenue as a city, along with the library and other pressing issues.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay,
That's all of us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up will be Mahendra Kenkri. Mr. Kenkri, hi, welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, we are, as I've said to everybody, we have the same 6 questions for you that we've had for everybody else, and we'll go in order to be the same. They'll be the same. As I've also said, there's no time limit for your answers, but please be mindful that we've listened to a bunch already. We still have more, and brevity is the word of the evening, which is not as funny as it was the first time we said it, right? Anyway, we appreciate you being here. So I'll start. My question is a 3-part question.
Sure.
So first, the city of Troy has gone through quite a bit over the past few years. Knowing that, why do you want to be appointed to Troy City Council? What do you believe are the main issues facing our residents and businesses? And what do you think you can do as an individual council member to solve or move in the direction of solving these issues?
Okay. Do I get an opening statement or we just know? Okay, fine.
No opening statement.
Okay,
so
good.
You can work it in, I'm sure.
No, that's fine, that's fine. I just retired from a very productive career at General Motors. I had 30 plus years working, and I feel that I'm at a point in time in my life where I have the flexibility to spend the time and to do more for community service. I worked in a environment at GM, which was a very demanding for the kind of work that I was doing. I worked in so many different areas. I worked in engineering, purchasing, logistics. I worked on the electrical vehicle program. I worked in the electronic division, and given the nature of the industry, it is not really possible, a very dynamic, competitive, and globalized industry to be able to do a job, which is not even anymore a 9-to-5 job anymore, because you're working across the global time zones. And it just would not have been the right thing for me to volunteer for something as major as this. It would not have been good for me personally. It would not have been good for my family. It would not have been good for the Troy residents. It would not have been good for the city administration whom I have to work with. And I'm a person who I like to set priorities. And I want to make sure that anything that I do, I'm going to give 100% of my time, and I'm going to do the right thing. So trying to be on the council was not part of that plan. But so now that I have time, I do. And what I see is that so many skills and competencies, my life experiences working over these 30 years, and I've internalized so much of that, I feel that I can bring it to bear. Okay? Let's take one example. Every year, as part of my employment, I'm required to go through a corporate training on integrity. I understand the value of integrity and why integrity is important. Integrity is about being honest. It's about keeping the public trust. It's about being trustworthy, truthful, and also about owning up when you fail to do something, owning up to your mistakes, owning up to your shortcomings. And I truly believe that given the opportunity on the council, I will bring integrity with me. And I believe that in a city administration where the council is at the highest level of administration, integrity starts at the top. Integrity goes directly to the culture at the top, the tone at the top, and that's where everything follows, because people want to see that in anybody who is serving on the council. And I know that there are issues right now, but I feel that given the opportunity, I would be able to bring everything that I have done with integrity. In my 30 plus years, I'll be able to bring it to the council. But let me add one more thing as to why I think I'm a qualified candidate. I mentioned that I worked in so many areas in General Motors. And they were so diverse areas, but I had confidence that I will be able to work in these different areas because I know that I'm able to work easily with people with different backgrounds, individually or in a team. I can work in a respectful way, and I don't bring an ideology to problem solving. I don't bring a preformed mindset to solve problems. I look at the data and the facts as they are presented to me. I have an analytical way of looking at things. I like to keep myself informed, and I will do what I feel is the right solution for the right problem without being influenced by anything or anything. And that's what I've done for 30 years, largely as engineers. And the technology that I worked on, vehicles that are worked on, millions of those vehicles are running on the road. And I understood that what I'm doing, it has impact on the real world. There are going to be millions of people driving or riding in this vehicle, just like when a city council makes decisions. Those decisions have impact to the citizen. There are real-world consequences when the city council does. And I live that every day for my 30 years, doing work, knowing that everything that I'm doing is going to have a real-world impact to somebody who is driving a vehicle. And I think you said 3 questions, and I don't know if I answered all 3 or I answered just 2.
Guess we'll have to find out, huh?
Okay.
You covered. You covered.
Okay.
Councilmember Abraham?
Thank you. Trust between City Council and residents is essential to good government. That trust has taken a hit as a result of Council's handling of the former city manager before and after his criminal actions were known. What measures do you think City Council should take to grow trust with residents?
See, I think the trust comes from being open and being transparent. And that is, I think, is like the fundamental premise of public service. You do not want people to look at anything that a council person does and feel that, well, maybe there was a hidden agenda, and it is not my agenda. It is not agenda of the people, but it is somebody else's agenda. And I think it is necessary to be open and transparent because we are doing work for the people, we are not doing the work for ourselves. I think, let me take an example, okay? Like 4 years ago, I think it was in 2017, in the election of 2017, there was a major issue about the Civic Center project, right? Okay. And I read the master plan. I read all 249 pages of it. And when I read that, something struck me, okay? There is no placeholder in that master plan to build a civic center, okay? And if I use automotive jargon, which I think Councilwoman Abraham may appreciate, there is no package protect for a civic center in the master plan, right? And I'm just kind of thinking about it and said, all this effort that was spent so many months, it was completely outside the process. Because as a professional, whether I'm an engineer or somebody is a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or a law enforcement, we recognize the need and the importance of doing everything by following proper procedures and proper processes. And there is no plan in the master plan for a civic center. So I'm just asking myself, so how did this whole thing even get so far without anybody asking a simple question, why is this outside the process? Because there was a process to do the master plan. There was engagement with the community. There were discussions with community leaders. There was a real estate forum. There was so much that went, that culminated in the master plan. Now, reasonable people may disagree about the details of the master plan, but there was a process. And I'm asking, what was the process to come up with this plan for a civic center? Was there a process that involved citizens, or was it just a proposal that came from some developer and then it just snowballed and took a life of its own? So where is the process, right? So I think it is necessary for us to understand that, do we have the proper processes, okay? And let me just touch upon one thing. Brian Kishnick was sentenced to 30 months in jail, not because of, wait a minute. Let me rephrase that. Brian Kishnick got fired not because of anything he did in the city administration. Brian Kishnick got fired for personal issues. He went to prison because of an outside investigation that involved what happened at the city hall. There's something wrong with that picture, the way I see it, right? If the city council fired Brian Kishnick, it really should have been because of what he was doing in the city administration. There's a disconnect as a resident. There is some disconnect there, and I think we need to find out why did it happen this way, right? I think we need to focus on what are our processes in terms of how the council members are interacting with the city administration. I read at the Plan Moran report, and there was one thing that struck me was that there is a memo that allegedly it says that the city manager rewrote. There was the original request to buy 1 vehicle, and he changed it to buy 3 vehicles. And I'm kind of scratching my head. I mean, is the city administration doing work just on a piece of paper? That somebody just took a piece of paper and just rewrote the memo and just brought it to the city council and they just approved it. I mean, isn't there anybody else in the loop? Because, see, I don't remember when was the last time I did anything on paper. Okay, because we live in a world today of paperless office. Okay? In my career, if I would walk past the office of our vice president or executive director, I would not see a single piece of paper on their desk, because they want to set the tone that we are in a world where we have paperless office. And I couldn't understand, how did he manage to pass that just by changing a piece of paper and get a approval? I don't know all the details behind it, but when I looked at that, it just looked like there needs to, that we need to look at some of the processes that exist today in how the work is being done. And it all comes out, therefore, to have the proper transparency, to be able to stand before the people and present ourselves that we don't have any personal agenda. It is people's agenda. Be open and be transparent. And if we make mistakes, it is okay to own up to it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brooks.
Please outline a few ways in which Troy City Council can improve community outreach.
Well, one thing I would like to say is that we are a very diverse community, right? So, and I don't look at diversity just as different cultures or it is a different ethnicity. There is diversity in terms of there are families with young kids and there are senior citizens. One of the statistics in the master plan says that in a few more years, some 23% of the city population will be over the age of 65. Right? So I think we need to be cognizant of the broad spectrum of diversity. About 24%, I think, of the city population is born outside the country, just like me, and like I'm a proud immigrant. So I think what we need to do is that we already have a civic center, and I think we need to look at what kind of programs can we expand to the offerings in the civic center. We have enrichment classes. What can we do in terms of that? We have so many places of worship in Troy. Like, for example, the Bharatiya Temple is the largest place of Hindu worship in Troy. I think we kind of need to engage with all of these different communities and kind of make them part of the outreach, to say, well, tell us what ideas do you have? Instead of kind of coming out as, well, this is what we want to do for you, engage all of them and ask, what do you think would be a good way? Let me throw out just one example. Let us say once a month at the council meeting, let us say if you invite, let us say, one group here and just give them like 2 minutes just to talk about themselves, okay? Just 2 minutes or 3 minutes, just to talk about themselves, who they are, what they do, as a way of creating public awareness. And in that way, you are kind of drawing them into the city administration, something that they may have never done before. And they may have, maybe nobody had ever even reached out to them to understand how the city administration works. So I would say that we should start by having a conversation with them and see what are the steps that we should take.
Thank you. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Council has a jam-packed schedule over the coming months. In addition to the regular and special meetings scheduled and the advanced preparation necessary for those meetings, whoever steps into this position will have catch-up work to be ready for important decisions such as their budget. And on top of that, you'll have to retain the seat in August. Have you thought about the time commitment and work involved? And what are you doing to prepare yourself for that challenge?
I have all the time in the world right now. I retired 1 year ago, and I don't have a plan to join the workforce at this point. I'm not interested in looking for another job because I do want to spend my time to do what I really want to do. And maybe I can just kind of relate to that in a way. I grew up in a household where I learned a few things from my parents, and those things have stayed with me. You work hard. Education is the key to your success. Okay? Family is important, and you do good for the community, starting with your neighbors, and that's what life is all about. And I have made a choice right now that even though I'm just 60, and a lot of people of my age, when they take retirement, they go and take a job at another supplier or such, and engineering salaries are good. I made a conscious choice that I don't want to do that because I really want to do what I want to do. So I'm willing and prepared to put whatever time it takes. And I'm aware that there is an election coming in August, and I've thought about that, and I'm ready for that. So I don't see any kind of time constraint on my part. If I'm on the council, I'm going to run for the election, I'm going to work hard, and I will do everything I can to win.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here. What unique perspective and experience would you bring to City Council?
Well, I think I kind of talked about so many different things, which kind of dot, but let me see if I can just circle around some of those. I talked about my background as a professional of 30 years, where I worked on so many vehicles from concept to production, and I worked on so many technologies, and it is running, and those things are now on the road. There are millions of vehicles with the technology that is running on the road. And it's a heavy burden on you when you're working, because every day you know that the things that I'm doing, somebody else is going to be in that car. And it is not just a quality of life issue, but their safety is important because their families are in that car. And I recognize that it's the same kind of thing with the city council, that the things that we do, it affects people's lives. It could be a senior who has mobility issues and has needs. It could be a young family with little kids who want to make Troy their home because of the great schools, and they are interested in affordable housing in Troy. So I can see that what I would be doing as a council member is not just voting on A or B, but I understand that it has impact on people in the real world, right? When I read the master plan, and there's so much of statistics in there, and it tells you about so many people will be over the age of 65. I can see the people underneath those statistics, that these are real people with real issues. They are not just numbers on a paper. And that's what I have done for my career of 30 plus years. And that's what I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring my integrity. I'm going to bring my strong commitment to be a good steward of the city. And one of the most solemn things I think an elected official does is spending public money. And I believe that public money should be spent where the needs are. it's not about what I want or where I want to spend the money, but I want the money to be spent where the greatest needs are, so that I can stand before the people and I can make a case that I'm doing this because it is in the best interest of the community. I don't have a personal agenda. I don't have any other ambitions. I'm here just like what my parents taught me when I was growing up. I was growing up in India. I was born outside the country, and I think this is kind of relevant. I was born outside the country. I was born in a territory that was a colony of Portugal when I was born, and it became part of India later on. And in my family, I was the first generation to have the opportunity to go to college, and just like every kid in the territory, I've lived a different life. And even though I now live in the greatest country in the world, a lot of the things that I saw and I learned in my early stages, I've internalized them and they're part of me. And all of that is about do good to your community and starting with your neighbors. And that is just the kind of commitment and the outlook that I plan to bring if I had the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. Councilmember Hoderick.
Hi. What policy or strategy will be your main priority during your appointment to council?
You mean like as a council member, what things I would want to?
What policy or strategy is on your mind? What's the priority?
Well, I think the population of Troy is aging. And I think we kind of need to see what are the needs of the senior community. There is a Troy Ride program right now, but from some of the conversations that I've heard, but there is a lot of interest to see that if that can be expanded or that can be somehow enhanced, which is one. And I also recognize that Troy's brand is schools. That's the main reason why people want to move to Troy. And I think many families with little kids who are early in their careers, I think are finding that affordable housing is not exactly affordable in Troy. And I think we kind of need to look at that. I know that there is a lot of pushback against the high density housing, and I fully understand that, and I don't think we should do anything that that the residents of the neighborhood would not want, like some high-rise housing. But I think we have to be smart about to see that what kind of strategies can we really look at so that housing can be affordable to families with young kids who want to come here and who want to make Troy a place to live. So those are the two things I would want to focus on.
Thank you, Mr. Kenkry. That's it. That's all of them.
Okay, thank you so much.
Appreciate you being here, and you know it's not easy. Thank you very much. The final interviewee is Sunil Shivraman, who's been sitting there by himself for the past however long. It's got to be a weird feeling.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Sunil. Thank you for being here. I'll say what I've said to everybody. There are 6 questions. 6 of us will ask the same question that we've asked every other candidate before you. Okay. There's no time limit for your answers, but you just sat alone in that room, so you understand that Absolutely. We've been sitting through these questions. That said, of course, say what you need to say, but brevity is the word for this evening. And I'll start with the first question.
Is it okay that I take notes on the questions?
It's your prerogative.
Okay. So, thank you.
The city of Troy has gone through quite a bit over the past few years. It's a 3-part question. Knowing that, why do you want to be appointed to Troy City Council? What do you believe are the main issues facing our residents and businesses? And what do you think you can do as an individual council member to solve or move in the direction of solving those issues?
All right. Let me see if I can hit all the 3. The very first one, the why. the why is very simple for me. It's the desire to serve. I've been in Troy. Troy is my home. Troy is where I'm building my family up. And I've done multiple volunteer opportunities within Troy, but it is serving without any affiliations, walking in here and making the right choice for the citizens of Troy, forgetting your affiliations, forgetting your beliefs, forgetting your political views, everything at the doorstep and coming in. Let me give you an example of this. I've got two lovely teenage daughters, and the other day they came up and they said, Dad, we have got to go for this party. It's a school party. Can we both wear mini skirts? You know, the conservative dad in me said, no. But then I sat back and said, I've got to be liberal. I've got to be thinking out loud. So they both went for the party wearing age-appropriate clothes. Now, if I'm doing that at my house, why would I do something different for the city of Troy? And I always remember the words of my mentor, which is, one, look at the problem at hand, evaluate your options, and then, of course, I may not know everything, so I've got to reach out to the experts, talk to them, and then come up with a win-win solution for what is done, what is right for Troy. And on an, would you believe in walking the streets of Troy, I've heard from a lot of citizens. So there are a couple of things, and I'll just touch high-level points, which is, number one, the overbuilding of Troy. Number two is Troy is a diverse community, and Troy is a community that embraces and empowers this diversity. And yet, we need diverse thoughts into the city council. So that's the other thing. And there are other things like transparency and changing the tone at the top. Those are the other things I've heard. I'm sure all of you have heard that. I won't go into any of the details into that yet. On individually solving them, I think the best and the first thing we need to do is listen to the people. Again, listening to the facts, evaluating the facts, reaching out to the people who are the subject matter experts, and coming back to the table with a win-win solution for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you. Trust between City Council and residents is essential to good government. That trust has taken a hit as a result of Council's handling of the former city manager before and after his criminal actions were known. What measures do you think City Council should take to grow trust with residents?
Let me right off at the outset say that there's no silver bullet to get trust. Trust and respect are two things that are earned. It's earned by your actions. It's earned by our actions and taking the right steps in order to do that. Let me start off by highlighting thank you to the council for at least, not at least, I'm sorry, forget that, for taking the first right step, which is Mr. Miller, who's sitting right here. You've got a person of high integrity you chose as a city manager. That is our first step in earning trust. The second step is ensuring, there was a beautiful report that was put out by Plan Moran, and ensuring each of those 14 recommendations are acted on, and not only acted on, how fast are they acted on, and how is the city council and the city government making these recommendations, the actions that we take on them, to be sustainable. The key word here is sustainable, and communication. Open, free communication to citizens saying, this is a Plan Moran recommendation, here's what we did, here's a sustainable action we did, and here's where we are taking it above and beyond. And that's what I would recommend and I would act on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brooks.
Please outline a few ways in which Troy City Council can improve community outreach.
So a little bit about my background. I've got 28 years of IT expertise, and I've got a bachelor's in computer science and technology, and I've got a master's in computer science, though the thesis is pending. But to an IT person, an outreach is, the first thing that hits you is digital media. So social media, digital media. This would encompass, I would say, about 60 to 70% of Troy, then, which is what the city is doing right now. I mean, you've got your Facebook site, you've got your website, you've got a single click away to each of the councilors. Basically, by single click away, I'm saying one email to all of the city council and city management and the PR director in the city. So those are all great things. I would continue doing that. I would continue pushing digital media to the next level in terms of maybe a tweet account for the city of city. I don't know whether we have one or not. I'm not sure. I know the mayor has one. So digital media is one. Regular media is the second one. The city is publishing the planning commission meeting and the city council meetings, the agendas, including every city community organization, like the traffic committee, the planning committee, all the agendas are put out there. I think what could also be put out is saying, hey, can we solicit inquiries about it, online inquiries? So again, I'm going back to now, the third thing is the one that's favorite to me. Nothing, absolutely nothing beats a one-on-one interaction with people. I've walked about 50 to 60% of Troy in terms of the precincts. When you walk up to the door, knock on the door, shake the hand and say, hello, sir, hello, ma'am. What can the city of Troy change for you? I think that's the most important thing, that handshake. And again, the other ways of doing it is coffee with the city council, coffee or snack, whatever, chai with the city council, or having open hour sessions. A couple of years ago when I ran, I said, every other Saturday, I will be at the Troy Public Library to answer your questions. Now I make a commitment. If I get selected, I will be walking and knocking on doors. I want to cover the rest of the 50% of the homes.
Thank you. Council Member Erickson Gold.
Council has a jam-packed schedule over the coming months. In addition to the regular and special meetings scheduled and the advanced preparation necessary for those meetings, whoever steps into this position will have catch-up work to be ready for important decisions such as our budget. And on top of that, you'll have to run to retain the seat in August. Have you thought about the time commitment and work involved, and what are you doing to prepare yourself for that challenge?
So the way I see it, it's about time commitment and the challenge and racing up in a fast manner. Let me give you a little bit of my personal life story. When I came into this country 28 years ago with no internet, no cell phones, direct phone calls away, coming to UMass Dartmouth, I came into Boston Logan, and it took me like 3.5 hours to reach my college. And it's interesting because I didn't know where I'm going to stay in. But I saw kids playing, young adults, sorry, playing cricket, which is an Indian sport, on the side of the street. And they helped me. The very next day, I walked into my dean's office, the dean of student life at UMass Dartmouth. His name is Don C. Howard, great Irish guy, 70-year-old. And I said, Dean, what do you do? What do you do for these international students who are coming into this country? You sign the paperwork every day. We walk in to the US government. We walk in through the gates of Logan with his paper signed in. So he knows when we are coming. And he looked at me and said, okay, son, what's your solution? I said, sir, I have an international driver's license. You sign the paperwork for every child coming to this school. Tell me about it, and I don't have a vehicle. Give me a vehicle, put gas into it, I'll go pick them up. Thus started my desire to serve. That was on day 2. Over the years, what I found is, you have a right solution, you don't need to wait. I run budgets about $45 million with Ford Motor Company. I know how to handle numbers. I have people who report to me in multiple continents at Ford Motor Company. So I know the people part of it. And the most important part is, especially, let's come back to the city of Troy, right? If all of you remember, I was at the planning committee and city council meeting a couple of weeks ago. I made an open request. The master agreement, so master plan, it was at the crux of a lot of the conversations there last time I met. I said, why don't we thin slice it, prioritize the list, and then action it. Come back every 2 weeks and come out with the communication on what happened. This will certainly go a long way. And that to me is immediate response. And I know agendas could be backfilled and everything, but this, if you make a task a priority, it will get done. And unfortunately, that's what we need to do with the master plan right now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here. What unique perspective and experience would you bring to City Council?
So let me kind of see if I can break this down into 3 categories. I'll start with professional, personal, and my volunteer experience. And professionally, as I said, I'm an engineer with about 25 years of experience at Ford Motor Company. So I plan to bring that IT knowledge, the ability to read between lines, because that's part of the IT knowledge, because you look at code all day, and you're a program manager, you're delivering to the needs of people, delivering to the needs of the diverse needs of the people all around the globe. So that's one professional expertise I would bring in. On a personal level, I'm a dad with 2 kids that are going to Troy High, so most of the people who are used to parenthood knows the travails of that, how much it takes on a toll on you, how much work it takes. Also, on a personal level, I'm proud of my lineage as an Indian, and I've got strong ties back into my community, and I've been working on a lot of activities, not just in the Indian community, but in the entire Southeast Asian community. So that's a different, personal, diverse view that I bring in. On the volunteer experience, I volunteer for multiple committees within the city, traffic, financial ideas team, sit on the Troy's historical village. I'm extremely humbled and thankful for these opportunities. And the one that I'm very proud of, I actually came back from Troy Youth Assistance meeting at 6 today to this meeting. I lead a program called as a Mentor Plus. This is where children in need in Troy, yes, we do have children in need in Troy, they are matched up with a prospective mentor. And just that matchup and to see how they progress through those days and months of mentoring, that is heartwarming. That's absolutely heartwarming. So other than the professional, personal, and volunteer experience, I'm very proud to also say that I know Troy. Having walked almost 60 to 70% of the precinct in Troy, I know the people of Troy. I've stood by the people in McClure when the overbuilding was coming up there. I've talked to the people in Sylvanwood. I've stood by them. I've gone and walked Ottawa, the streets of Ottawa, where the new building is coming up, where the old house is going to be tarnished or taken down so that they can create a private road. So all that I can say is I know the pulse of Troy, and I know the needs of Troy, and I'll never let it down.
Thank you. And Councilmember Hodrick.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hi.
What policy or strategy will be your main priority during your appointment to council?
Looking back at the history of Troy and what has happened, and I strongly believe that my top priority would be transparency. Open, complete transparency. And I would start the journey by saying, go look at my campaign finance reports. That's number one for me. And look at who contributes money to the people who are running, number one. Now, let me step back to my professional experience, because that is a guiding force for me. Out of my 28 years of Ford IT expertise, 14 of them have been with directly auditing people. It's being with being a security SME, for lack of better words. And once we sign up for the job, we sign up for a code of ethics, and we uphold that code. I'm a master CISSP, which is like equivalent to being a ethical hacker, for lack of better words. And we sign up to that code. And that's the code we live by. And that's the code I live by. Now, coming back to the city of Troy, one of the biggest things I heard while walking down the streets is transparency, transparency, transparency. That will help change the tone at the top, which was, again, another Plan Moran recommendation. And how do we do it? So this is just my thought, okay? I want to make sure every city's financial transaction is public. It's open. I know our public ledger is open, but which supplier got the contract, what is the cost of cement that is being poured, and why did that supplier get this contract? That's what we need to make public, in the sense that that is, to me, an open book. And that's the right of the citizens of Troy to know that. And I firmly believe in that, so that would be my highest priority in terms of what I bring in and my strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shivaman. That's it. That's all.
Oh, wow.
We appreciate it.
Thank you all. I really appreciate the opportunity.
First thing I've learned is high school students need to be taught not to get up in the middle of presentations and get their paper signed. so we need to maybe give a note on that next time. But anyway, so the conundrum, for lack of a better word, is that we are now tasked with deciding how we do this. There's different methods we can use. In the past, we've all suggested our first person that we would like to see. If that person gets 4 votes, then theoretically a motion could be brought to appoint that person. We could have someone appoint or make a nomination to appoint somebody right now. I personally would like just a couple minutes to review some of my notes. I'm assuming that would be okay. Obviously, for those of you that know and don't know, we can't go behind closed doors and discuss these things. It's very different than a typical job interview. It has to be all in public, so which creates some fun and challenge all in the same. So if we can review our notes, should we recess for that? But I would ask that nobody leave the table, if that's okay. So let's recess for, how many minutes do you feel like you need?
2 days.
I think we're getting close to 30 days as it is, right? Yeah. So, I mean, let's say 5 to 7 minutes if we can. Okay? So we'll recess for 5 to 7 minutes. So the question is, how do we want to move forward in this process and how we would like to do it? Certainly we could, like I said, we could all go through and name our top choice and see where we land there. We could name top 2 choices and see where we land there.
I like just naming top choices. If there's 4 that have the same top choice, then that's it. If not, then we'll figure out another way.
Thoughts on that, Councilmember Hoderick?
Are you suggesting we just go ahead and vote?
We just all say our top choice, and if there's 4 that have the same top choice, we're done. If there's less than 4, if there's 3, then that's not a majority, and then we'll have to either do ranked choice or
flip a
I
coin.
don't know. Flip a coin. No.
Hey, they do it in caucuses.
Yeah, no, we're not.
So we did do the top choice. That's how we did it last time this council appointed somebody in 2016. It's telling, I guess. It's interesting. I mean, if that's the consensus of how council wants to do it, we could do that.
Okay.
Councilmember Abraham?
Just a clarification, if we all vote for our top choice and there's not a majority, let's say there's a plurality, are we limiting our next votes for the 2, 3, 4 who were selected as a first choice? Are we eliminating any candidates after that first round voting?
I don't think we should do that. That's just me.
We'll decide it depending on what happens, I think.
I'm concerned that this is going to
Councilmember
be,
Erickson,
I'm sorry, I didn't ask. I'm so concerned this is going to become the Vatican conclave and we're going to be here all night voting and voting again and again and again. But in general, I think it's best to start with each of us just picking our top choice and see where we go from there.
Okay. I mean, I think there's consensus for that. Yes, and we would do it in the roll call. Councilmember Brooks?
But just to confirm, we still need the majority, we still need 4 to choose that one.
Correct.
One individual.
And technically, this is just a preference poll because then a motion has to be made to make the actual appointment for the person, which we'll then vote on as well.
Right, this isn't binding.
This is not binding.
The actual motion and approval is the binding part.
Okay.
Ready?
I guess we're ready.
Mayor Baker?
Sunil Subramanian.
Councilmember Abraham?
Rebecca Chamberlain-Krenga.
Councilmember Brooks?
Mahendra Kankre.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Mahendra Kankre.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Rebecca Chamberlain-Krenga.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Rebecca Chamberlain-Krenga.
So,
No majority.
No majority on that one.
majority.
Okay. Certainly, I think we're within our rules to have some discussion if necessary. Is that fair? Although I'm not sure exactly how I want to do that, but let's see. Would anyone like to make any opening comments on this or talk about how we do this? We certainly could do just a second round of trying to name based on what we've heard so far. I mean, that's kind of maybe the easy way out, but we could have some movement there. Or if anyone feels strongly about their particular candidate, they'd like to make some comments to try to persuade one of us to support them. Councilmember Abraham.
So let me start off by saying I would be very pleased and honored to have any one of those 5 individuals sitting next to me.
Yeah.
I think every candidate that spoke tonight, there was at least one, if not more than one thing that resonated with me. And so it really is a very difficult choice. To me, I have to look at this as a very singular 5.5-month appointment. And I'm looking at this from the viewpoint of there is a lot that needs to get done in the next 5.5 months. And who is best suited to hit the ground running
so that we don't miss a beat as a body, as a council. Again, any one of the five, I think, has the capacity to do it. My vote indicated, who I think I feel is best equipped to fill the role immediately with the steepest ramp-up potential. It doesn't mean that the other four who I did not select couldn't get there. That is just my viewpoint. The budget and the library millage are the two things that are top of mind for me, and strategically, well, the budget has to be approved by May 18th by Michigan law. And as you could hear tonight, there's still a lot of budget discussions yet to go on, and that begins for council in April, but for city staff, you're right in the thick of it now. And it is very important to me that we select someone who is able to look at that very complicated budget and be prepared for those study sessions in April. The library millage does expire next year, and council is looking at ways, and we'll have a study session in June. I don't think it's being scheduled yet, but to talk through the options, because there are operating and capital needs that aren't being met today at the current millage rate. That's going to be a very big time commitment, really from June forward, even beyond this August election for a council member. And we need to be in a position as a council to address those needs as capably as we can. So again, all five, I think, are very qualified. Not an easy decision. I was poring over my notes during our 7-minute break, and that ultimately was what made the decision for me, or compelled me towards that candidate.
Anybody else? Councilmember Erickson Gall.
I agree with Councilmember Abraham that I think a key thing that we need to consider is who's best prepared to step into this role. Because of the unfortunate timing of this decision that we've been faced with, we're asking someone to basically jump in feet first, possibly up to their neck, in a whole lot of very important decisions. In addition to the budget talks, we have performance reviews for our city manager and our city attorney. We are looking at perhaps doing something with an ethics ordinance. There's a lot of things that we've been talking about and thinking about doing that are very important. So I think it's the key, and I totally agree that any one of the 5 candidates we interviewed could step up and be an excellent council member. My vote reflected who I thought was best prepared to just jump in feet first and get this done. I think we also need to be cognizant of the demographics of our city and understanding that we have a lot of people from different backgrounds and constituencies, and we need to make sure that everybody in the city is represented and has a voice here. And that was another thing that I took into consideration in my vote. As far as how we go forward, I'm not sure what the best strategy is for that without continually deadlocking, but I very much respect all of my fellow members of council and the mayor, and that our diversity of opinions. I think that shows how difficult a decision this is for us, that we could come up with essentially 3 different candidates that out of the 5. And now we have to narrow it down to 1. Yeah. Lucky us.
Councilmember Hoderick.
This is a very humbling position for me to be in because all 5 of these candidates and everybody on this council blow me away with their experiences, their intellect. These are just really smart people, and I think we can all be proud to live in a city where 5 such qualified people came here very impassioned about wanting to serve, and they all impressed me. Some I've known before, and I've seen their involvement in the city. Some are new to me, and whether appointed here or not, I want to beg, and if I have to buy them coffee, we need the involvement, and it doesn't only happen at the city council table. It happens in so many different ways, and all 5 candidates demonstrated to me that they have great voices in this process. I've been thinking about the diversity as well, and also Mayor Stein's comments at the beginning. Nonpartisan is absolutely critical to me. Even the perception of partisanship, I think, can be an issue that has been a problem in the past. I deal with misperceptions about my ideology and how I approach things, and it can come to bear in terms of trust issues with the community. And so, those optics to me are weighing in the back of my mind. We have 2 lawyers on council. We have 2 engineers. We have a council member who's a total nerd about finances and municipal finance, and he geeks out on researching it, looking at it. We have a doctor and a business owner. We have a business person, somebody who's lived here for a long time. I am a boomer, although I'm at the end of the, depending on if last year is 1963 or whatever, let's just not talk about it. But I'm there. It's amazing to me to think that I'm an elder. So I'm thinking about diversity of perspective in multiple ways at this table. And the individual that stood out to me stood out because of a diversity of perspectives. Economics background, World Bank, sociology, understanding global Troy and diversity issues. She's been involved in seeing some of the behind the scenes with issues and challenges here in the city, so she does hit the ground running. And a creative mindset that came forward while understanding where residents are, maybe some new ideas. So there's a diversity perspective in that regard. That's why I lean toward that one individual for what is essentially a 6-month appointment. The community may differ and may decide that they want to elect someone in August that's different than who we appoint tonight. But I'm looking at it as someone who knows our city administration already, knows this council, and has been following and can step in to fill in those 5 months. Not to say that there weren't other people that can too, but the standout to me is that diversity of perspective and the creative thinking I heard in the interviewing process. So that's kind of where I came out in this. And I'm really, really passionate about the nonpartisan piece. When partisanship comes into play at the council table, even misperceptions about it, that has really hurt us in the past. That's been, maybe I have some, maybe my worries about that are overdone, but I don't think so, because we are in such a hyper-partisan world and people are exhausted by it. And so that's a piece of it that's very important to me as well. Somebody that I think can be perceived as very neutral coming into it. Not that there's anything wrong with Democrats or Republicans, we love them all. And, but I want someone that's not where their focus has been necessarily in a political party, more on the overall city and the overall global feel of the city. Having said that, I'm like, all 5 candidates are just so outstanding. So,
Councilmember Brooks, did you?
I mean, I agree with everything everyone has said up here. This is a very, very difficult decision for all of us to make, and you know, it's hard being in this position, and because we have 5 amazing candidates that came before us with really, really incredible credentials, and so I feel that we are so fortunate as a city to have so many amazing people that want to step up and serve. So I think we should be so thankful for that. And, you know, this process is difficult, but it is what is called for according to the charter. We are going according to what the charter calls us to do. And so, with that being said, you know, we have to kind of make the decisions that we feel are going to be the best for the city. And we all have a different perspective as to, you know, why we made our decisions. But, you know, in August, the people will have a say, and I think that will be, you know, a wonderful time for people to say, you know, it'll be the will of the people, whoever people choose to elect in the special election, regardless of who we choose tonight. And there's always going to be, you know, 4 disappointed people, but I encourage everyone to still stay involved and to serve for our community, because we need you.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yeah, I can't follow a lot of what everyone said, all 5 candidates. I really appreciated seeing their passion for Troy. You could really feel it from everyone. The people come from other communities, people bring their families here, and they come and it's a very nerve-wracking situation to be up there speaking and putting your life on display for all of our city. I'm really grateful for everyone that came here. Besides what everyone else said, what really brought me to my decision, and to me, the issue I'm razor focused on this year, the thing that I'm very passionate about, is our library. And so the candidates that really spoke of the library, it really spoke home to me. I grew up here. I remember as a kid going to the library, and being a book nerd that I was, it was heaven to me. And so I want to do everything we can to expand, open our library 7 days, and have other kids like me that were really brought up on that library to have that opportunity again. So that's why I supported Rebecca for her stance on that.
So I supported Sunil. I'll just let we all remember that, right? And let me tell you why. I mean, when I hear what everyone said about who can jump in, demographics, who has relationships in the city, to me, that is Sunil. He's been around. And frankly, it's also Dana Gowis. I have a little bit of a bias in the sense that the 2 people who had just spent the last half of last year running for this seat probably have a better pulse and tone of what's going on in our city with the residents, which I think is who we represent first. I do think it's important that we have have representation on council that looks like our community, as long as they're qualified. And you know what? All 5 of you are perfectly qualified. None of you are perfect, just like all of us are qualified, but none of us are perfect. So I could legitimately, and we've talked about this in the past, I could make an argument for each of the 5 of you to appoint and give my vote to tonight. And some of you won't like that, and some of you will. I understand that. I mean, that's kind of how it works up here. The honeymoon's probably getting close to being over. No, I'm kidding. But you know, but the reality is, I still do advocate for Sunil. I think that he is somebody that understands what our residents have gone through and has spent the time in the neighborhoods. He may not, you know, he may not check off everybody's boxes, and maybe he didn't speak about the library tonight the way somebody needed him to, but he has worked very hard in this community to try to be a part of it. So I still think he's a good choice. The other 2 that were recommended, I know Rebecca. I think Rebecca's also fantastic. There's no question she's smart, she's educated. You know, she's somebody that clearly cares about her community. And I'm same with Mahendra. I don't know Mahendra as well, but I understand why he got the votes he did receive tonight. This is an odd situation, having basically a 6-month term with a filing deadline if you want to retain the seat coming up in 2 months. So it seems a little bit odd to me, but that's what the cards were dealt. I also want to say that, because I've given my initial support to Sunil, it doesn't mean that I can't work with whomever does get appointed tonight. And I know all of us feel the same way, and we. In fact, we'll make it a goal to make sure that happens. That said, we could either have someone try to move a nomination, do it that way, or we could go through again and see if anybody's changed their opinions. I'm open to suggestions on that.
Now what?
Mayor, another option is to do two, to do a top two or top three. I mean, yeah, you could do that as well. That's just another option that you could consider.
You also do ranked choice, where you rank the choices, and whoever gets the least first votes gets removed, and then you go to your second choice and then move to the third. Though that puts more people's names out there. I don't want to make anyone feel bad, but that's another option. Or we could just try moving someone.
My concern about trying to move somebody is I'd ultimately like us to have unanimous support, whoever we nominate. That's fair. That's not binding, and I can't force that, but that would be my goal. I'm hesitant to do that, to have it not be that way.
I'll say I will support whoever the majority chooses. I think we had 5 great candidates, and so, I mean, I would be okay with it. I think all of them did a great job, so I would support whoever the majority supports.
It's getting to that majority that might be the tough spot. Why don't we name our top 2 and see where that shakes down? Can I have a second to think about who I'd like to say for my top 2, though, please? That's all right. Does everybody need another minute, or?
So just clarification, are we going to just total up the votes and whoever gets the most votes?
We haven't gotten that far yet, Ann.
Okay.
No,
I'm just trying to understand why we're...
I mean, in the end, it's the formal resolution will be to appoint a particular person. So all this is, we do top 2, we do all this. This is still just negotiation till that final motion. So
I think it shows if there's a second person if there's consensus between the 1 and 2 person, it may become obvious who might be a good choice. It may not also.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if everybody else does, but I understand.
Oh, the lawyers, right? No. You need another minute, Ellen? That's a yes. Yeah. I think this is why hiring decisions are usually made in private. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Ready?
Yeah.
All right, you understand?
Yes,
Oh.
so I'm going to call each council member's name. You just give me your top 2 choices, and then we'll see what the results are. Mayor Baker?
Sunil Shivraman and Rebecca Chamberlain-Krianga.
Councilmember Abraham?
Rebecca Chamberlain-Krianga and David Anderson.
Councilmember Brooks?
Mahendra Kankre and Rebecca Chamberlain-Krianga.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Mahendra Kankre and Rebecca Chamberlain Krianga.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Rebecca Chamberlain Krianga and Mahendra Kenkri.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Rebecca Chamberlain Kranga and Sunil Sivaraman.
Did that solve anything, Madam City Clerk?
Possibly.
Okay.
Ms. Kranga received 6. Mr. Sivaraman received 2. Mr. Kenkri received 3. And Mr. Anderson received 1.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion, resolve that Troy City Council hereby appoints Rebecca Chamberlain Krianga to the vacant City Council member office with a partial term expiring August 10th, 2020.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton, that we appoint Rebecca Chamberlain Krianga to the vacant City Council member office with a partial term expiring August 10, 2020. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
I will just say, this is a 5.5-month appointment. It ultimately will be up to the people to decide, and I encourage anyone that has a passion for this to run, and we did the best that we could. I know we can never make anyone happy, and ultimately up to the people. And again, all 5 were fantastic. I could feel their passion as they came up here. They were all nervous, and you could feel it flowing through them. So I asked them all to get on boards and committees, run for council if you wish, and thank you for stepping up for our city.
Anybody else? I'd also like to thank all 5 of you. I think that I would rather knock on every door in Troy, some of them again, than do what you did tonight. I think that it's a much cleaner process to do it and go out in the electorate and talk to people. This is, I've said it a couple times, but I don't like this process. I don't think it's right. It's something we maybe need to address with our charter in the future. But I strongly encourage those of you who aren't getting appointed tonight, assuming the vote goes as expected, to stay involved, do what you can to be a part of the city. There is an election coming up in August. The same seat will be up again in November the following year. So thank you, and I really do appreciate all the energy and attention you've given. I know this has been a few weeks of your life, and you really all were very well prepared, and it's almost, I don't know if frightening is the right word, but really impressive that you could come and stand up here and take our questions not knowing what they would be and speak with clarity as to the issues that are at hand. So thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. Rebecca Chamberlain Kranga has been appointed, and I think if she's ready, we'll do a swearing in right now.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Michigan, the Charter of the City of Troy, and that I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of City Council Member in and for the City of Troy, County of Oakland, State of Michigan, according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
I'm going to take another 5-minute recess just to get Rebecca seated and up to speed on the rest of the agenda. All right, we are back on the record here. That concludes regular business. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull one of the items on the consent agenda this evening? Councilmember Abraham.
I'll move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed. There's an opportunity for discussion or any questions. I know you're just seated at the table here. This has been a public agenda, so I know you've had opportunity to go through what's on tonight's agenda. So any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes. Motion carries. If you're here on a consent agenda item this evening, all have been approved. There are no memorandums and future council agenda items this evening. Next up is public comment for items not on the agenda. We have Marv Reinhardt signed up. Gene Stein's also on that list, but that was a mistake as I understand. So, Mr. Reinhardt, please come forward. You know the rules regarding the timer.
Oh, yes. I got lots of time. Oh, by the way, I got to make this quick. Remember Harbor Springs, Traverse City, and Troy. Okay? Harbor Springs is a place they grow weeds, sell weeds. That's where the your last mayor lives, Slater, okay? The 88 building holds the lawyers to promote it all over the state, and the way they're talking, you know, maybe early next year the state will be forced everybody. It doesn't make a difference what you law unless you want to be sanctuary city. So all this is smoke and mirrors when they say Troy don't want to do it. When Marco Island is another place people retire, has their own brand of weed that they're pushing. So this is not like South Africa. They don't want the Cougarans. The 16 Mile is pushing weed for the state. And this city is making a mockery of the citizens, arresting them for weed and all that, when the ex-mayor lives in the city that promotes the stuff, okay? The Canadians got warehouses 20,000 square feet owned by Marlboro. They've been growing it for years up there, okay? I'm part of the Association of Deer Slayers in the area. You know, the guys that watch your house when you're gone in the winter. Also, too, I noticed local page 284, they exposed the house of a black civic leader that died recently, that black guy, but they did not expose Jack Van Impe's place that's located in Troy, and that got me kicked off the page. Then I called her editor because I'm an ad crafter. If you know what ad crafters are, we can sell ice to Eskimos, and I let him have it because I talked to him over lunch. In other words, I'm an SOB, like I said. I talked to the chairman of the board. I got a little thing I send ahead of time, all the trials I've been against you people, okay, and I won, critical, citizen, you know. I talk to them direct. I don't need to talk to your committee, okay? So, and also, I'm talking to the Air Force because of the flies over. The helicopter flies over my place, high, low, high, low. I called the state, the city, they don't know, so I'm calling Southridge because you're going to put a 15-story building up and they don't even have it plotted. And I ask about 16 Mile. They don't got those buildings plotted. They have raised the antennas, especially on the building that China bought, okay, about 25 feet. You got that airport over there. Don't you know your city? So that's, like I said, that's what I cover. I got 5 different Facebook pages for Troy at different levels of political thing. I'm part of the walk away movement from some radio station in California. And like I said, I got TV and I call these guys, what do I do to be able to talk on your thing? And 2,
Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt. That concludes your time this evening. That concludes those who have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda. Now's an opportunity for City Council or City Administration to respond or reply. Thank you. Seeing none. Next on the agenda is Council referrals. There are none this evening, so we move to Council comments. As if we haven't spoken enough tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Just like to welcome our new council member, Chamberlain-Crainga. Thank you for stepping up. I know it was a grueling process to be up there, and it's a big sacrifice for your community, and you got to hit the ground running right now, but we're going into a closed session right away. But thank you for stepping up, and it's glad to have you on the team, and look forward to working together with you.
Thank you, David. And I'll just say,
Councilmember Chamberlain-Creighanga.
I spoke enough tonight, but just want to say it's an honor to serve all of you and to work with an amazing city administration.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Welcome. And I just wanted to mention, I'd been seeing some feedback and input on Nextdoor about traffic safety issues in the city, and some comments that were presented there, and we monitor and try to get that feedback. And I noticed one of the police officers who lives in town, actually one of our captains, saw the same comments, and I knew that the police department was aware. I also saw today that Sergeant Lehman posted on Nextdoor that the police department the rules of Nextdoor make it so that they can't see who's posting information like that as a police department. So the bottom line point is the police department, city administration, city council, we value the eyes and ears of the city. If you are seeing issues in terms of traffic and where you believe that patrol is necessary, and patrol does occur, it rotates, but if you're feeling like it's missing and needs more eyes, by all means, feel free to email us into City Council. We can forward it into administration. Call the non-emergency number of the police department. You can go on the police department's Facebook page and comment. They're on Twitter as well, Instagram. There is a traffic safety unit, and this is a very important priority. That tone has been set here from City Council, and I want to assure residents that sometimes that dialogue gets going, and then there's an impression that's left that's not rooted in the reality of what we're doing. And but bottom line, if you post on Nextdoor an issue, it's not as if the police department is seeing it. And if we don't happen to be monitoring as council members or don't happen to see it on a certain day, we're not going to see it either. So it's not the best way to communicate issues. It is a place of dialogue, obviously, about it, but to really have the eyes and ears of the city to work with residents, the best thing to do is to email in or call in to the non-emergency number. And also, if anyone is ever seeing a truly reckless driver in the city, that does merit a 911 call. Call it, and you can be eyes and ears for the dispatcher to hopefully get the police to catch up with that individual. If you've ever been in the communication center, you can observe that there's calls that come in from I-75, and there's a coordinated effort of dialogue between the person calling in, the dispatch, and our police officers to try to catch up with somebody who may be ill as they're driving, drunk driving, or distracted driving, with texting. So that's what we're here about, and health and safety is a priority, and I just am hoping to quell that dialogue on Nextdoor and pivot it to a place where we can really take action accordingly. Thanks.
Councilmember Brooks.
I just wanted to, there's a lot of events actually coming up in Troy the beginning of March, but two of them that I just wanted to highlight were the Nature Center. It's maple syrup time, so bring your family and friends out to figure out how maple syrup is made, have some tasty maple syrup treats. It's on Saturday, the 7th, 14th, and the 21st. And the second is the Taste of Troy at the San Marino Club. That's being put on by the Boys and Girls Club of Troy. That's March 1st at 1 p.m. And that is their biggest fundraiser, I believe, of the year. And it's a wonderful, wonderful cause. I know at least myself and Councilmember Galt recently went to an informational session at the Boys and Girls Club of Troy. And they're doing some amazing things for our community. And they really want to open up a teen center, which I think would be a wonderful asset to the members of our community as well. So come and support.
Anything? I have a couple things. So, first, congratulations to Councilmember Chamberlain Krienga. To have two really long council member names on the each end here. This is tough. I checked with the city clerk, but I may be wrong, but I think this is the first time Troy City Council has had 5 women council members. I think. Maybe wrong about that, but that's pretty remarkable. Certainly with Jean Stein sat here tonight and was the first woman to be on council, right? So it must be interesting for her to see and have that perspective. That said, welcome, and you do have your work cut out for you because we all have our work cut out for us, and you will have to hit the ground running. So look forward to working with you on this team for sure. A couple more issues of serious concern. We have Councilmember Erickson Galt brought it up earlier in passing, talking about an ethics ordinance or something to deal with our ethics. We've talked a lot about that in the past few months, and I'm hoping to seek consensus from council tonight to direct city management to look at a time to put together a study session on ethics for council members. I understand that we are probably best to wait until we have some information back, a report back from Plant Moran on our city council investigation that we've done. I think that could be a good tool to guide us with that, but with the ultimate goal of having some kind of updated ethics policy that really makes it clear to council members, the public, city staff, what it means to be an ethical council member, and that of course fans out throughout. I'm not proposing any dates, anything at this point, and I know that our calendar is, already pretty full, but I do think this is very important, and as we talked a little bit about tonight, rebuilding trust in our community and having a strong ethical springboard from this council, and this new council especially, is very, very important to me. So I'm hoping to get consensus to have city management work towards that. I think we probably already had it, but just to bring it back to the forefront. City Attorney Bloom?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. That is something that, again, it is a priority. We know it's a priority. However, the budget is coming up, and again, there were just so many other things. So absolutely, we have not, it has not fallen away. We still intend on presenting it. I do think that it will be helpful to have the Plant Moran final results. We don't have those yet. I will follow up on that. Yeah, a study session would be helpful for us because there are a couple of different opportunities to implement an ethics policy. So we need your input on that.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just want to say definitely, I hear that, so it should definitely be after budget session, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, it's May, June, somewhere around there. But yeah.
For sure. Also, I'm a council member and a mayor that doesn't love to get involved in Lansing politics from this table because I think we play our role and we should focus on our city government, and they play their role, they should focus on state government. But I have had some feedback from City Clerk Dixon as it relates to the different plans in the Senate and the House talking about the absentee ballot counting issue. I can speak from firsthand experience as a candidate that a couple years ago, I waited till I think it was 3:30 in the morning to get the absentee ballot votes or results, and that was on a very low turnout election day. They're anticipating, I think, 25,000 absentee ballots in the presidential election this November, and there's a Senate bill that Senate Majority Leader Shirkey, I understand today, said he will not put the bill up for a full vote. But there are still bills pending in the House and committee that could potentially bring some relief. Again, I don't like to get involved in these and say, hey, we should be doing this or we shouldn't be doing this, but when I hear Aileen Dixon as our clerk, when I hear Tina Barton as the Rochester Hills clerk, Jan Roncelli in Bloomfield, when they're all speaking to the same concerns and issues, it says to me that there's a potential problem that our community should at least give support to our city clerk for anything she can do. She's testified in Lansing already on the issue. But as I understand, one of the main concerns from your perspective is that besides the sheer volume of having to get all of those, you can't open and process an absentee ballot as of right now until the polls close on election day. Is that correct?
We can begin counting or begin processing at 7 a.m. on election day.
Processing, correct.
Right.
And some of the proposals ask for to start the day before, to at least start the processing, or even some have counting. There's different variations, and I don't think we should be necessarily involved on talking about what we think is best, but one of the concerns you have is you rely heavily on volunteers to help in this process, and they're quite frankly usually seniors, because those are the people that have time on a Tuesday, the availability, and the potential right now is that they'd have to stay for 24 hours or more straight, because they're not allowed to work shifts or leave, correct?
That's correct.
So to me, that seems ridiculous, to say the very least. I mean, to put that on a volunteer is not smart. It's not good for health, safety, and welfare. I mean, all the things that we're supposed to focus on at City Council. I think it's definitely something that needs to be addressed at the state level. I've heard comments that it is, we don't know that it's going to be a problem, so let's wait and see if it becomes a problem. I understand there's a time and a place for wait and see attitudes, but let's look at what just happened, for example, in the Iowa caucuses. The results were not clear that night. Can you imagine if we're in Michigan and we're waiting until, in a state that's supposed to be in play for the election, we're having to wait till the Thursday or Friday after election day just to find out what the votes were? I don't want to wait and see what happened, what kind of problems that creates by doing that. I'm not looking for any consensus tonight on any kind of resolution in support of any of these, because I think there's different bills, and I think that would be foolish from this table. But I certainly would love to hear if anybody else has any thoughts or comments that you'd like to put out there, at least on a general level, to help our city clerk if she would like to send any written communication supporting. Councilmember Erickson Gall.
I actually would suggest that we consider a resolution that doesn't ask for any particular relief from Lansing, but demands that Lansing address this problem and come up with a solution. I think that's fair, that's reasonable, that's, we're not trying to tell our representatives and senators in Lansing how to do their job, we're just telling them to do their job. I think that's the key difference. Which right now it sounds like they're not doing they've been presented a huge problem statewide, and they're doing nothing about it. I think that might call for resolution on our part.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Just thank you, Mayor, for bringing this up. This is something that does hit home. I mean, all of us have gone through except the new member, have gone through the election process, and we know how critical it is to have trust in our elections. It's kind of the root of everything we do here. It's the root of the trust here is we have the consent of the people, and if they can't trust the electoral process, then we're lost from the get-go. So thank you so much for bringing this up. And again, I'd like it to be a bipartisan solution, which is always hard to get in higher levels of government, but you have my support for any kind of resolution you bring up, and thank you.
I think there is bipartisan support at the state level in some respect, which is a good, promising thing, which is one of the reasons I feel comfortable bringing it to this table as a nonpartisan council. Obviously, there are Republicans and Democrats who are going to have different opinions on which bill might be best, everything. But I think our next meeting's not until March 16th, which is 3 weeks from now. And I don't know the timing of these specific bills, if that is if the timing works to try to put together a resolution. I'm certainly not going to put together something from the table tonight.
Yeah.
But is there, and I'm not sure who should write that resolution if we even gave consensus to it. Is that something that, as a city clerk, you'd be willing to potentially help with some language for us that we could review and vote on at the next meeting?
I could speak with Mr. Miller, and we could figure something out. We'll work, but we can put something together. It was just a timing issue as far as not having a resolution for you tonight, because it was something that we discussed just today. So, but I could certainly put something together, work with Mr. Miller, and have that for you.
Is there consensus for something that to be done? Looks like it. Okay.
Mayor, thank you, and we can prepare something. The one thing we might suggest looking at the timing is that we waive the rules and actually approve it at one meeting because of timing reasons. But we'll look into that.
Okay, I think that's wise. Last comment. The two of you on this end are no longer the brand new council members, so your hazing period's officially over. Next on the agenda are reports. Does anybody have any comments on the reports this evening?
Me.
City Attorney Bloom.
Sorry, Mayor, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the liquor hearings, and it is unusual that we don't have liquor hearings, but in reviewing the records, this is one where city administration is recommending that we do this administratively. I will tell you that Nancy Morrison from the Troy Community Coalition contacted me today and said that she will be going out and approaching all of the violators to see if there's anything that the Troy Community Coalition can do, as well as what we would do administratively. But I bring it to your attention because if you don't agree with our recommendation, then we need to get those scheduled immediately.
Thank you for bringing that up. Part of the purpose for the liquor violation hearings for me is to sense and get a sense of the remorse of these violators. If that can be done administratively somehow, as well as the proper training that needs to come with it, I'm okay with that. Those of you who have never done those before, have you done them?
Yeah.
You did them. We didn't do them last year or something. Yeah. So you might not have a lot to say about that, but it's again, for me, it's about the remorse. It's about the understanding that we don't take it lightly, and if that can be accomplished from an administrative standpoint, to where they really do understand that they're not getting a pass by not having to come before us, I can understand that logic. Any other comments on the reports? Okay, well, we do have a closed session this evening, so we will recess for now, and we'll adjourn from the closed session after that.
All right.